Gonna call this Board of Ed meeting to order Wednesday, August 14th at 6:30 PM. Please stand for the pledge. Do we have any public comment? I see none in the room. Doesn't appear that we have any online. Okay, we'll go ahead and move into the superintendent's report.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy August. And it's hard to believe we're very close, it seems, to the school year starting. So it's exciting. We have quite a few new staff members that will be joining us, and I did put those in my report, but I'll just kind of go over that with you because there's been a couple little changes since I gave you the report. We did have a special education teacher take another job. That's Kyoka Mars Garrick. She went to Stonington. So what we did was we had hired Kevin Noonan as an alternative education teacher, but he's going to actually take her spot at Wheeler. Okay, so and we did hire someone who's not on this list just recently, Chanel Lapid, as the alternative education teacher. Okay, and actually I'll be talking about her later because I have to have your permission to vote on a salary step. Lapid, L-A-P-I-D, and it's Chanel, that's C-H-A-N-E-L. And then we have, of course, Kathy Trammell, Director of Finance or Business Manager, who is here tonight. And we have officially Matt Mendolia, who had served many roles for us over the last few years, but he is officially our technology teacher and passed and certified, and it's all legit. It's great. Bailey Brackett, you may know as our new Wheeler PE health teacher. Brenna Sullivan, a grade 3 teacher. That's a 1-year position. Libby Short is the part-time social studies teacher at Wheeler. Bern Macca, who you know is athletic director. Kim Haggerty, of course, is the director of instruction and learning. So Alexandra Sloan, new to the district, is our BCBA. Nicole Skovish is a special ed teacher, and she actually started with us at the end of last year at the elementary school. And then Victoria Mentasti is a paraprofessional at the elementary school. Nicole Sheehan, who actually started at the end of last year, but we'll be welcoming them as new staff because they kind of missed that, as an RBT. Raquel Tucker as an RBT. She also started last year as a paraprofessional, but they are now going to be RBTs. Okay. Jessica Ward is an RBT. Jennifer Reamer as an RBT. Abigail Merchant is the new 6th grade science teacher. Caitlin Baker is an elementary school building sub. Raina Hemlin is a Wheeler building sub. Emma Whitford is a Wheeler building sub. Ryan Hare, a Wheeler building sub. And Deb Dwyer, who hopefully will come to talk to you at some point, but I'll give an update about Cub Club tonight. She is the Cub Club director. And then also, as you know, we had a resignation of our band director towards the end of last year, but we found Alex Sanders as our new band teacher. So we're excited about all these new people. A couple other ones who just recently hired, Rebecca O'Neill will be a para at Wheeler, and Ayla Dean will also be serving as an RBT at the elementary school. So that's staffing. Oh, one more thing. There is an ad that went out today for North Stonington Public Schools bookkeeper. So we'll be looking for a new bookkeeper in my central office.
Just one quick comment. Could we get a budget kind of take on all the salaries with all the new people and stuff?
I had given you some indication towards the end of last year about that. And showing that with the people that left and the people that came in, there was significant savings. I can't remember those numbers off the top of my head, but I know we had gone over that. It probably would be revised now.
Yeah, because you got some new people.
Yeah, it
obviously.
will be revised, and it's something later in the agenda I gotta ask you because of the teacher's contract. It says I need to ask you permission to hire someone with more than 6 years' experience.
May I ask a quick question? Oftentimes in the past, we will have like a reception, a Board of Ed reception to get to meet all of them and to welcome them.
Oh.
Would that be something that the board would want to do again? It's a large group of people. It would be very nice to welcome them. Just we
I think
usually
it's
just
a
do like
wonderful idea.
cookies and coffee. Right.
Q&A.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It might be nice for them to, I'm sure they've all met, but maybe to all come together. to
Right.
meet.
We are a week from tomorrow hosting a new staff orientation here in this room at from 9 to 1.
Okay.
We're going to give them a bus tour of the town. We're going to go over some goals and the theory of action document that I shared with you and just things like that. Just a little get to know you, and
Would we be
t-
able to maybe pop in as
you
part
could
of that?
you could pop into that if you like. I can we could schedule a certain time for you to pop
When
in.
is that, Troy?
So that is Thursday, the 22nd. So it's a week from tomorrow. And it's scheduled from 9 to 1 o'clock. So, you know, it could work. Like if you wanted to come at 9 to just welcoming them, and that's how we can just kick it off. And you can hang around for, you know,
Are there enough of it? I know I'm not
20
available.
minutes
but
or so.
are
We're
there enough?
probably, I think we're gonna get some, I think we have some little munchies coming for the morning too, so that could be nice. We already have that set up.
Okay.
I
You
think
could go-
just
okay,
coming,
I
coming to the
can't,
board
but-
would be easier because this timing would be easier for me. I know
Oh.
for the rest of the board, but
what time?
for just to come to actual board meeting, so they actually attend one board meeting to see what it's all about, right? See who the people on the board are also.
It would have to be September. It wouldn't be
It
before
can
the
be, I
school
mean,
year.
yeah, that's fine. It doesn't
fine.
have to be.
Yeah.
The first day of school. Just think about it, I guess, would be the thing. If they could maybe
Yeah.
pop into a
Well,
board meeting.
here's the other thing, like if a board representative wanted to pop in Thursday next week and just say hi to them,
Mhm.
that could be appropriate too, and that we could do both.
Okay,
And then they could be invited to a board meeting as a new staff as well.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I think I could probably pop in briefly at 9.
That would be nice.
Lisa, are you?
Yes, I could pop in at 9.
Anybody else? Okay,
And maybe
All right.
we could just formally
Okay.
invite them, whether they come or not, but we could
Yeah, yeah,
formally
you
invite
say,
them
yeah.
to the next,
Say,
to the
yeah, we
first
have
board
another
meeting in
board-
September.
Yeah,
I love that.
You know,
Yeah.
just, you know, either probably beforehand, maybe we can come a little early to the meeting, like 20 minutes early and,
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think it's nice for them to be part of. the
that's
process.
nice. Okay, I like it.
Okay. So the next thing in my report is just, I wanted to give a little update about the Cub Club. And it's, I think, going really well. I've met with Deb Dwyer, the director, a few times this summer. We've been looking at Arlie site, that is where the site where people sign up and register. And we do have now 40 kids that are signed up. Each of those kids aren't coming every session, right? If each of those kids came every session, we would have too many. We don't want that many, right? What we would like is 18 per session, and we already have one session that has 18. It's a Wednesday afternoon sometime in September, and we have other ones that are approaching that number. So no, one so far, what we have, we're up to that point where, yeah, I think if you, because we're concerned about sustainability, I think if we get to the point where we're averaging 18, actually, I calculated 17, but I'm saying 18 to put a little buffer on it. I think we could sustain it with the salary of the director and another person running it. And we actually have 5 different high school kids are interested in either volunteering or possibly being employed, because a couple of them are over 16. And we could we've met with 3 of them already. And they know, like, starting out, it's just going to be volunteer, get used to the program and all that, but it could lead into like, hey, we could actually pay you hourly for your time that you're here. So we're looking into that. So we're optimistic about that. We actually have one of the new RBTs is interested in putting in some time and also being a backup person, because we are trying to create backups in case a staff member can't make it. We don't want to shut the club down for a day. So we want to have backups ready. So it's developing. Deb is going to hold a little training session for the people involved on the PD days. And so things are moving along with that.
Do you have a dollar amount of how much we're going to generate in September by what's already signed up?
I know we have money in the Cub Club account.
From the Board of Ed,
but-
I'm wondering what the.
So no,
kids
there's
are
no
gonna
money
generate.
from the Board of Ed. The 35,000, the board said up to, for the non-lapse, we haven't
Yeah.
spent a penny of that.
Oh, okay. Great.
And I'm hoping not to have to spend any of that. And I think that by having the kids interested, start as volunteers and get to know the program and kind of go through like a training, on hands-on training, that I think the numbers may increase to the point where now we can pay them and sustain. So
Great.
I think when I put out a reminder, we've got a few more people signed up. And I think we're getting there. And I have like Greg Cormier really supporting the software and defining the sessions. And it's going to get easier for us with the signups in October, because we're going to make it straightforward. Just sign up for the days you want. None of this all Wednesdays in October kind of thing. It just confuses it, makes multiple lists that need to be merged about who's coming, so.
Yeah, I think we talked about a little bit of some financial summaries on a monthly basis, kind of like a balance sheet, income statement, whatever, however you want to call it, just to kind of say that it is sustainable on its own.
Yeah.
So we did say that that was a requirement kind of a while back, so we
Yeah.
want to do the same.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
Of course, we haven't started the club yet.
Yeah.
So in terms of timing of that, it might be like the end of September, we give you the September report, because that's when
Perfect,
we're really
perfect.
starting. We've started 2 days in August, the last 2 days of August, okay? But then we have September. I think it might be, it might be appropriate, maybe, yeah, end of September or the beginning of October to have the September report. It could be part of our, just one more financial report.
Yeah, it's a one sheet.
Yeah. Yeah. Kathy loves to make reports. So that's good. Innovative instruction. We are going to provide training on the new educator evaluation system that is now directly tied to the district goals. And you approved it last time. I'm going to ask you to approve it again, and we'll talk about that when we get to it, because there was some tweaks that had to be made based on state input. Nothing significant. But this document, this is going to empower me and the administrators to hold all teachers and me, the administrators, accountable for achieving the district goals. Right. And we also have a theory of action document that I shared with you. That's in your packet. It's on the next page. It starts, and there's a district level one on each of the 3 goals. And then there's one more specifically for special services, one for the elementary school, and one for Wheeler. And we will be using these documents in combination with this one to ensure that we are making progress on the district goals. And, some people's goals will be more specific than the wording of the district goals, which makes sense. And even mine, when we meet for the retreat, we can review my goals. But they'll be in line with the district goals. I said here that I'll be sharing a draft capital list at the meeting, and that when we get to it, that's the single page underneath your packet. So that's there. And I just want to point out the transition of Kathy Trammell has gone very well. She's really fit into the central office and what we need to do for work, and she's really figured out a lot of things that we can do better, and has been working really, really hard on all that. And staff members have been quite pleased when they've had questions with the timeliness of the response and accuracy. So I think, you know, I'm really thankful that Kathy's working in the central office. We have a Board of Ed retreat scheduled for Saturday, September 28th. And I wanted to let you know that we do have a Board of Ed meeting scheduled on October 9th, but I plan to actually be away on that date. So I'm hoping we can consider either canceling that meeting or moving it. Possibly canceling it could be appropriate given that we have the retreat soon before. But anyway, so something for you to consider. I do think the board should do their self-evaluation before we get to the retreat. And I don't even mind tabulating some of that if you want to give it to me. Or,
Cabe will tabulate it for you too and give you a printout report.
oh, okay,
If you want to just send it up to them, then you don't have to put the work into it.
that'd be great. Yeah, we could do it that way. And I guess, let's see. Anything else on my report? I think that's it for my report. Anything else has a separate agenda item? Any questions?
I have a quick question. When you mentioned October 9th, I'm looking at the meeting schedule and oh, that one. Okay.
I did
The-
same thing.
Sorry. All right. The gray means they're done. Gotcha.
Yeah, I gray them out after they're done. Yeah.
Any other questions for Troy? All right, thank you. So I've got a few things just to catch everybody up on. I met with Bob Carlson to discuss the sort of how we're going to proceed with the capital plan at the tri-board meeting. We talked a lot about the capital assessment management process draft manual. It looks like we'll need to present something to the selectmen in October per that manual. And so Bob and I spent some time talking about how does that look? I think a lot of it we're just going to have to do and see how it works and make adjustments. So Bob's always really easy to work with. So that was great. We also discussed continuing to identify collaborative opportunities to increase efficiencies and our purchasing power. I know that he and Troy have worked a lot on the IT stuff and are doing really good work on that front. And so I hope to continue it. And it looks like everyone's looking in that direction. So it's nice to have everybody on the same page. In terms of irrigation, Tom Irwin was able to provide us with the irrigation map. And on 7/16, it was sent to the organization evaluating the map and writing the technical memo for SHPO. It was very quickly determined by the woman who reviewed the map that they didn't need to come out and do any testing. And she was really clear that since the irrigation is limited to the already built athletic fields, those grounds have already been disturbed. And so there's not going to be archaeological value to that. So she didn't assess any sort of issue and was writing the letter, the technical memo to SHPO on our behalf. And the cost for the memo was $400. So I think we got a good deal. She sent that off. And so now we just have to wait to hear from them that we're green lighted. But that was the process, that if we got someone to write a technical memo that said that we're in the clear, that we should be able to proceed. So that was exciting. Alex and I are meeting with Troy on August 20th to formally deliver the evaluation that we all did in executive session. I would like to attend the Board of Finance meeting on the 21st. Just to talk to them about now that we'll have like that year-end deposit into the non-lapsing account number. I'd like to talk to them about our non-lapsing memorandum of agreement that we're going to talk about later tonight, and update them on how many tuitioning in students that we're going to see this year. the Board of Ed retreat is scheduled for 9/28. I am gonna send out that board self-assessment. I'll send it out by the end of the week. Christine, how did you return it to CABE?
So everybody emailed me back a copy. They scanned it back in and I just shot those
Perfect.
all over, sent it
Okay.
over to Nick and
Yeah.
then he'll put it together for you.
That's perfect. So if you can get your self-evaluation back to me by the 21st, I should be able to turn that around. The other thing I wanted to add in looking at some of those CABE documents, are establishing not only Troy's goals for the year. So Troy's going to come ready to talk about his specific, not just district goals for the upcoming year, but also some goals for us as a board. So if everybody has some ideas about things that they'd like to have happen this year for us as a board, if you could send those to me, ideally I'd get 3 from everyone. I can compile them, sort of put the ones together that people agree on, and then we can look at the big list and we can identify what our goals are as well. That would be wonderful. I think that's all I have. Any questions for me?
I have a quick one. When you meet with the Board of Finance or when you've met with Bob Carlson, has there been any more discussion on who handles the maintenance over at the building?
So I have not met with the Board of Finance since budget season.
Right.
And Bob and I talked a little bit about that. I think that we were both hoping that that capital asset management committee was going to help us to define that, and it's not quite happened yet. So no, but I think it's still one of those things that we just have to, it's out there. We just have to keep working on it. And it may be that like something comes up, like as we're looking at our capital list, who does this belong to, us or them? And we're going to have to do a lot of that till we figure it out. But I think that it's something that everyone is committed to
Well,
figuring
because I
out.
just would hate for another fiscal year to
For
go by
sure.
where we're $75,000 in on maintenance. So can we as a board determine when do we go back to the Board of Finance for an appropriation or for monies for repair? At what cost does that become? I mean, I don't know, is it $5,000? The board has determined that we've now found that this is too much maintenance for our budget. I just feel like if we just keep going, well, we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to be sitting here in January again going, oh, we had a $75,000 in repairs again this year. And it's
Happy to ask Mike to put it on the agenda so I can get their thoughts.
yeah, if we
And then I
could-
can put it on our agenda as an agenda item once I talk to them, and we can chat about it.
I
then.
just would like us to get ahead of it if possible. I don't know if everybody else feels the same, but that's instructional money that we're continuing to spend to maintain.
Yeah, we've talked about that many times over the
It
years.
just keeps
so,
sort of
yeah.
going into the next fiscal year and the next fiscal year.
Nice,
So
nice to kind of get this behind us.
The-
Yeah.
The promising thing about it is that there was huge leaps and bounds made this past year in the capital planning and how that's going to roll out. And it's a different look than the town, I think, has ever had. And I think that everyone now agrees, especially through those tri-board meetings, that this is a real issue. I don't think anyone is denying it. I don't think people are talking now anymore about the idea that we need a permanent school building committee. So I think we've advanced our cause. We're just not there yet, but I'm happy to ask to put that on the Board of Finance agenda. Sarah, I don't want to call you out. Are you guys going to have your meeting next Wednesday? Yeah. It's still on the calendar. I just wasn't sure. I'll call Mike. Thanks. For sure. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Any other questions about my report?
Can you just clarify when you want us to have the self-assessment? Is that August 21st or September 21st?
I'm sorry, September 21st.
Great.
I mean, certainly if you want to do it by August
Mm,
21st,
I
feel free, but
don't.
it doesn't give you a lot of turnaround time.
Yeah. Okay,
I
great.
should have
Thanks.
been clear. Okay, so on to our July 2024 report. Kathy, you want to come up? I think you just have to turn on your microphone.
Hold the button. Right. No. How about?
Ours are
you
very
can
quiet
sit.
tonight.
If you want, you can sit.
Oh, that's nice, Brian. Thank you.
So this is week 6 in my new position, so please bear with me. I sent 3 files, the first being July actuals, which are, I call preliminary. FY 2025 July preliminary actuals versus a full year budget. We're not at a place in the fiscal year where we can see tremendous anything. It's too early, guys. We don't even have all of the July bills, the electric, the utilities, and so forth in. So this is just a snapshot. It's really going to take us till September to get things moving and start getting a better feel. But listening to your comments about capital and maintenance, I know listening to Randy, he's got a lot of projects going on, fixing HVAC and things like that. So that'll be something that will definitely be in my radar to keep an eye on, is the maintenance cost for the building. But again, so that's a very simple report. I'm not really sure it tells us anything at this early point in time. The second report that I did give you was the fiscal year 24 year-end actuals versus budget. And that's got the pretty green column on it, like to make it a little simple. And I tried to consolidate the accounts so that we weren't looking at so many lines and give some variances. So if you're looking at page 1, you could drop right to line 25 and you can see the total salaries for the year. We were favorable by $15,000, 0.15 of 1%. That's pretty darn close. That's good budgeting. You can't say bad things about that. And then when we get down and we take a look at employee benefits and such on line 37, we're favorable again by 7.5%. That looks like it's primarily due to medical. And I'm just being introduced to the consortium, the medical consortium, to understand that and make sure that I'm on top of it. But I do see, as somebody from the outside, insurance waivers were higher. So more people waived their insurance than we anticipated, which would make sense that our insurance costs would be less than budgeted. So continuing on to the second.
Can I ask something quick on that, just as
Absolutely.
we're going through? Because I was curious, the HSA contributions
Yep.
were actually slightly over, even though we had significantly more people taking the waiver. Are they allowed to ask, or sorry,
Actuals to the left, budgets to the right.
Favorable, unfavorable.
okay, well, even so, it was very, very close to what we had budgeted, even though we had a significant number of people who took the waiver comparatively. Do we do HSA matching contributions to people who waive the insurance
No,
if they have an HSA through us?
no, we don't.
So it just so happened that we were that close on HSA, even with the
The waivers being.
$200,000 of savings in the insurance.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. That it struck me as odd when I was
Yeah.
looking at it because
Yeah.
it didn't seem to match, but
Nope, that's a great question, but yes, we were that close. Let's see, so moving on to the second page, dropping to line 51, the totals you can see, this is primarily professional services, the audit, the fiscal services, NEASC and so forth, and it was unfavorable by approximately 29,000. A lot of that had to do with professional development, and most of it, when I looked at it, was Tyler Technology, which seems to be our time and maintenance, our accounting, our all of our systems. So I think we spend a good deal of money with Tyler, making sure that people are trained properly on the systems. I know I, for one, have spent some time with them. And also Learn. We had Learn come in, Troy had Learn come in and do some analyses of, our processes to make sure they were efficient, our payroll process and things like that, and documenting them because we lack the documentation. So we've spent a little bit of money there. And in terms of line 48, the SPED, contracted student services, we've had a hard time hiring in the RBTs. So we did have to outsource a little bit to Bloom Behavioral for RBT services. We're hoping we're still going to have to do that in the next academic year, more than I think we would have liked, but we're still searching for those RBT candidates so that we can bring that back in-house. Line 58, which is your utilities, your building services, electricity is the big thing. And I don't profess to know what happened before I got here, but there was some story about the electric meter being misread. And so I'm sure you all know. And then dropping to line 76, which is a lot of tuition for the, the magnet schools, the Voc schools, the adult education. Of course. Yep. A lot of it is New England Mechanical. When I looked at what had hit there repeatedly, New England Mechanical coming in to service the HVAC, and even something as simple as coming in for 2 hours costs us nearly $500 or $600 because they charge you to drive in, to drive around the block, to do everything, and it's an expensive endeavor. They'll come in and they'll take a look at it, and then they'll have to back away, go get the tools to fix it and the equipment to fix it. And I know that Randy is spending a lot of money on fixing the
So
HVAC, the heating cooling
Is it
system.
worth it to hire an HVAC person just as a?
That is a great idea because, yeah, I don't know,
It
HVAC
may,
is,
it may obviously offset all the other
Yeah.
Do we
stuff.
have a service contract with them? 'Cause
we
typ-
do.
And they still charge us to come out?
Oh, yeah, they call it a environmental charge, $95. Just to drive
Yeah,
on out.
It's not a good deal for us. So
Hey,
Right,
I would-
it's
I
very
would- I
expensive.
would look like to kind of make it in-house if you can, I think, might be yeah.
Sorry, can I go back one
Yes.
other
Yep.
thing? You mentioned, excuse me, the RBT and how
Yes.
you project going forward, we still might need some RBTs, and you just listed a bunch of RBTs that we hired. Are you in need of more, or are you, I guess I'm trying to get some clarification on that because we just
'Cause it
heard.
looks like we hired what we budgeted for.
I
That's,
thought April had said she was down 1 or 2.
Hi, everybody. Can you
Is
hear
that-
me?
April, hey.
Hi, yeah, actually, yep, the people that Troy listed tonight, we're actually all set now for RBTs.
Perfect.
okay, good, great,
Awesome. Thank you,
Perfect.
April.
thanks.
Okay. So proceeding on to transportation, insurances, tuitions and so forth, we were favorable by approximately 120,000 of it. A lot of it is special ed kids being brought in. April and her team worked to bring those kids back into the district and save us some funds there. So that is primarily the favorability there. Yeah. That is, it's actually an expense from the last 2 years. We had an agreement with the administration that we would reimburse them for their cell phones, $300 a year, and yet we didn't reimburse them for the last 2 years, so we actually had to go back and do that. Moving on to page 3 and line 111, which is all of our supplies and I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
We're doing some math.
Sorry, I'm
I
just
talk
trying to figure out
fast.
in my head when we're talking $300 per year per administrator and we have, I mean, in terms of our total administrators, if you count the athletic director and everything, I mean, 5, 6?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it's telephone altogether. So
That was
Okay.
telephone altogether.
Oh,
Cell
yeah,
phones aren't
right.
$37,000.
Okay, I was getting confused with the 37,000
Yeah.
number. That's
We're
for the
short 5.
entire phone system, but the
Exactly.
$5,000 that we're off is because we had to
Right.
go back
And pay for 2
and do a
years.
separate year. Okay,
Just 1 year would be fine.
It's a one-off.
but isn't that still only like $1,500?
that was like $3,000. But again, the telephone is over, but the cell phones didn't help.
Well, we're just off on telephone.
Right,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
of it was cell phone, maybe not all of
Yeah,
Right.
we just focused on cell phone because that's what the description.
Because that's the largest, yeah. I try to hit for a variance explanation on the most material things.
Welcome to the Board of Ed.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Special ed kids. So a great favorability there, and kudos to April and her team for being able to bring those special ed kids back to the district.
I just have a quick question on that
course.
page. What is the, what line number is it? Sorry. For the checks for the new account? What was that expense?
Those are literally checks for the new bank account.
That's a lot of
Yeah,
money.
it is a lot of money. There are 2 or 3 new bank accounts that we had to order checks for. What line is it? Are you looking at?
91.
91.
Oh, we're on the next page.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so there are other things in those office supplies, but a lot of it, we spent a good chunk of money on getting rid of the old and bringing the new, but certainly not 4,800.
Okay.
Yeah, but the problem with office supplies is it's little tiny bits of pieces of things, so I'm looking for what's really causing the variance, and the only things that were significant were the check costs. But even those, in the big scheme of things, for office supplies are not gonna make or break us. Software and software licenses on line 93. It looks to me, as I looked at this, that some of the overage in this was budgeted on another line item.
Yeah, this was a recent change because
Okay.
we
All
we
right.
requested that all of the software licenses be
Okay.
together instead of
Right,
having it
right.
under special ed for special ed software and everything.
it.
That way we
All
had
right.
one. So
Well, that's great, because I know when I gave the budgets to the administration, they were like, what happened to my XYZ? And I was like, I think it went here. And so that's a good explanation for, over this whole category, we were over by $8,500. And it shifted back and forth, and little amounts can add up, especially if you're sticking all the software. I think they said the mathematics textbooks were online software. And I said, okay, so that's going to go to software. So thank you for that explanation.
Hold on. So on the software includes instructional
Mhm.
material?
Yeah,
is
so
that
if
the
you have a
right-
textbook that's online, it no longer goes in instructional supplies, it
right,
goes to
is that the
software.
right place for it versus, I just want to make sure everyone is okay with it.
license, so.
Yeah, it is, but it's also, but you're using it for instruction though. It's not necessarily software that kind of filters in.
Right.
Right.
I think as long as we're budgeting, we have a list of all of the software that we have, then, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another, but we really don't want to miss any of that
It'd be
software.
nice to, I think, somehow
Break it out.
bifurcate the instructional part of it, just to have an understanding of what we're replacing books with, just to kind of have some visibility. I think it's kind of helpful.
Okay.
rather
Take
than
some
just
guidance
lump
from
it
you
all
folks.
in.
If you
So-
want it all in software, great. If you want it in split up.
Or make a subcategory. I don't know. I don't know what the rest of the board wants to do, but for me, it'd make it a little bit easier to understand exactly what we're talking about on software. I
No.
agree, we should lump it into one account somehow, but maybe you can have some sub accounts that kind of give the instructional part of it versus what's the,
Yeah, like IV and Power School are
Right.
non-instructional
Right.
software.
yeah.
And I think for the fiscal year we're entering, it was budgeted as the actuals hit last year, so we'll have a better apples to apples comparison.
Because we used to have to approve software for instructional stuff in the past. Right, right. So that's why I was kind of wondering about that. Okay.
It's good for me to know. And then, you can see where we spent the bulk of our money on line 121 is mostly with, repairs and new equipment, a lot of computer systems, furniture, whiteboards were big commodity this summer, getting it.
Was whiteboards under
They
the,
were under 115.
Yep.
Not 120.
121.
Well, 121's the.
Oh.
That's the
Oh, sorry,
summary,
yeah,
yeah,
thank
yeah, the summary. But
Sorry, it's something.
I don't think so. I don't have it on my non-lapse.
No, I know.
Oh.
For years, what you have is where I just.
Yeah.
So looking at the full actuals for the year to budget, we ended favorable by $18,500 or 0.12 of 1%. That's pretty darn close.
So Kathy, I think you probably know a little bit of the history, but of course the board will remember that end of the year number changed pretty dramatically, I would say, since April. And so at one point we were talking about 80 something thousand. Then we were talking on this last report, year-end forecast in July, 56,427. And of course, now we're down to 18,562, which would be presumably the deposit into the non-lapsing. And when I compare the reports, we sort of knew about most of these other variances, right? So they might be, we under budgeted here, we way over budgeted here, but those have been pretty consistent. And so the one line that isn't consistent and that likely makes up that
Yep.
big chunk is line number 30, which is employee retirement.
Yep.
So all of a sudden we were unfavorable by $34,000.
So what comprises that number is in the past fiscal year, the one that we're closing out, the pensions paid to the custodians, the secretaries, and the folks that get, $2,000 or $3,000, they were recorded in the last fiscal year for the prior fiscal year. So we incurred that expense in the prior fiscal year, but we didn't pay it out until January. And so we recorded it in last fiscal year. Theoretically, if we work on a cash basis and you tell me we're working on a cash basis, that's one thing. But when I looked at it, my interpretation is, okay, we didn't get those paid out or we didn't get them accrued in the right fiscal year, but I need to accrue what we owed our employees for the work that they did through June 30th of 2024. And so I calculated it and actually just sent it off to you have to go through the actuarial and they have to review my calculations and it just went out with the last payroll. So we're ahead of the game from last year, but looking at the last fiscal year, we picked up the prior fiscal year and we picked up the fiscal year that we were in. And so that caused us to have like a double accounting for the contractual pensions that we have.
Is
22 to 23, 23 to 24, or are you saying we picked up this current fiscal year last?
Yes, absolutely. You're right. That's
Okay,
my
yeah.
mistake.
Okay, that's okay.
Yes,
So that makes
absolutely.
sense. Okay,
Yep.
and
So it would be contractual pensions for 22, 23 and 23, 24.
thank you.
No, thank you for pointing that out. Yep.
is there a way for us to look and see if this has been the consistent practice so that we know did they always pay it out in January over the past 10 years and it's just we're switching that and we're going to have this one-time thing and that's over? Is that seems strange.
I spoke with Bill before he left and he looked at it from a cash point of view and it was rolling, but I tried to go back and look at when it was paid. And the interesting thing was that we picked up 22, 23 and then 23, 24 and 23, 24 only included some people that were having the employer portion of the contribution put into their bi-monthly payroll. So Kathy Trammell, hypothetically, gets 5%. I would get 5% in my bi-weekly payroll, but then Joe Schmo gets 5%, but we didn't put it in their bi-weekly payroll. So there was no continuity between how we were treating one employee.
I guess I'm just that worries me significantly since pensions are investment processes wherein 6 months is a huge period of time to not have.
Yeah. So, and that it's a good time to ask you folks, because I've looked at the contracts and there's not a lot of clarity when we say that we're contributing 10% of somebody's salary, 5% of somebody's salary. I know for the secretaries and the custodians, it says at the end of the fiscal year, it's to their pension. But for people like me or somebody that has that, when should it be contributed? It should be contributed with every payroll so that they don't lose that earning power on the money that the school is contributing.
To me, it makes no sense not to. Like we
Right.
budgeted for a year.
Right.
We're giving an extra, like that's a positive to the employee. Why would we not?
But
But
the
we have.
practice has been.
So let's do it.
Yeah.
I would say. And I
Okay.
don't know about other people, but that seems.
The interest would accrue.
I guess I would look to the central office to determine how they would like to have that done and
I too would like to hear, Kathy,
Yeah.
from
Yep.
you and your assessment of how it should
think,
be done.
I think it should go, we withhold benefits for everybody over a 10-month period. I really think 12-month employees should have it over 12 months because when you're having medical and HSA and everything over a 10-month period and you're a 12-month employee, you get whapped for 10 months and then 2 months you have you're in the rolling in the dough. It's like, wait a minute, I don't want that. I want it to be status quo. But I also feel strongly that if we're making a commitment to an employee that we're going to make a contribution, we shouldn't be waiting till the end of the
Right.
fiscal year to make
Right.
that contribution. The earning power on that, they could come back and go, it doesn't say anywhere that we're doing that. So my intention with anybody, whoever I need to get to agree, is to start taking that deduction with the deductions. For this year, we're already into the fiscal year. I can't change the 10 to 12. But next year I can do that. But I can make it so that anybody we're contributing to, if we're contributing 2% or 5%, it's every payroll and not at the
Yes.
end of the fiscal
Yes,
year.
agreed.
Kathy, it sounds to me like you're doing the stuff that Troy talked about. I'm not sure what the phrase he used was in his report, and you are really looking through things. You are sort of putting measures in place, establishing processes. And I know that for us, it's not as exciting to see $18,000 in that line, but I so appreciate that you figured out things like cell phones and,
It's gonna
and
take a while.
contributions. And I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I'm going to hit some blips and I'm going to have a lot of questions, and, without a bookkeeper, it's going to be more fun, but we'll get there. And, Irma is amazing. She is a wealth of knowledge to me, and Troy, I just have to ask one little question and Irma will remember, and all of a sudden it all comes tumbling out. So I would be lost without them.
Well, thanks again for the work that you're doing. So that looks like that's our non-lapsing contribution for the year.
I have a couple quick questions. So did we zero out the last issue that we had on the town side? So we're not having to move over $30,000? Did that?
Kathy
Yes.
did a ton of work with the
Yeah.
town, and
The account
That's
is
the problem.
almost closed. I think we have 3 outstanding checks. The problem, we kept hitting, we changed to the new checking account, but then the IRS tax payment with the old checking account, and it would be like, holy Toledo. So we've God willing, and the river don't rise, have got that worked out.
Okay,
And there's only a few checks waiting, and then Sean's going to close it, and we're going to call it into that period of time.
perfect.
you look forward to that too.
Thank you so much, because we would be short if we had to do that. Steph, may I ask one more question?
Yes, please.
I'm just wondering with this change, and it's exciting to see that the work is getting done the way we're looking at. Do we want to propose, at least for a small period of time, a finance committee to maybe look at what we budgeted, meeting with Kathy to say, okay, this is what we budgeted for the upcoming years. Are we spot on with that, or knowing what you actually know now? Are there adjustments that need to be made? What do we want the report to look like? Instead of doing this for 45 minutes to an hour during a Board of Ed meeting and then come back and report to the Board of Ed, at least to do that for a few months cycle.
So I know this is a little painful and it takes a long time. And I think that you're right. For the foreseeable future, we're going to be spending a long time on it. My preference would be to do it like this, because I think that the whole board is invested in not only understanding what needs to be righted, but I find that these conversations in a larger board actually help us all to understand more about what these reports mean. And I think that most of us were showing up for that finance committee meeting anyway. I also do like that these meetings are recorded and those weren't. And I think that we certainly could, but I do think that there's a value in everyone participating, since it's such a significant thing that our board does. But with that being said, if you think we need to carve out additional time, an additional meeting somewhere to get through some more finance stuff, I'm open to that. And certainly if you all want to change how we're doing it, I mean, that's the board's decision, but I prefer it to be done here together as part of our regular meeting. I think it's, one of our most important functions.
I think you still have that opportunity, but I agree. It'd be nice to spend a little bit more time to kind of core into some details. First thing I thought about after going through this list is there like 5 top items that you're going to, every month, I'm going to say, hey, I got some problems I think I need to keep tracking. Or is it kind of, well, I'll wing it, see how it comes every month and just kind of roll with the punches type of thing. I like to have an action plan on if I see electricity going through the roof. What are we gonna do about it? If
Well,
we're
funny
just
you
gonna,
should mention that because the July electric bills came in and they weren't pretty. I don't know if you've been watching the news, but.
Well, I was gonna
it's
ask
gonna
if
get
we're
worse, no
gonna-
doubt. But anyway, you know, that's,
Right,
I'm
yes.
kind of, I'd like to maybe for first couple of months, just focus on, just to make sure we got a new business manager or whatever, and let's.
But there's only me. So
Understood,
please be
understood,
aware.
But
That's
it's
why
a
I don't want to
dedicated time though. to-
ding you with all these questions
Mhm.
on the fly. I
Yeah.
would rather be able to really dig down, prepare and say, okay, now let's go to Kathy with these
Yeah,
questions.
And she can take action items and report back.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
and I know I was one of the people who had first really pushed for having all of us be involved with the process of the finance, because I did feel like I wasn't understanding as fully, but I also feel like I looked at this report coming in and felt like most of my questions were answered, and the things that would come up, I think, could be handled in a committee meeting. I would, if the board wanted to move to the idea of having the finance committee separate again, so that we weren't doing all of these questions and we're able to just get a quick rundown from a finance committee, I would be fine with that. With
Yeah.
Thank you, Chad.
Wait, am I on? Okay. I don't know. I appreciate it in the meeting. I think that, but I recognize that the time is an issue. I'd rather spend more time in the meeting talking about this. But I know something has to give. So if there was something that we could maybe take off our plate for the next couple of months, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe, I know you like the reports, but is that something that maybe we can read ahead of time and then bring questions? Because I don't know if I necessarily need to like read it ahead of time and then hear the feedback. But I appreciate being here at this time I can make to hear the finance discussion.
Alex, I think I understand your vote. Lisa?
I think maybe we could, can you hear me? I think maybe we could do both. Maybe have a committee meeting ahead of time, and whatever questions are asked and answered in that meeting, perhaps those questions and answers could be on a page or read or sorted through ahead of time to save time, because you'll have already had the answers. And then if there's other questions, we're doing what we're doing now. Does that make sense?
It does, because
could
you
do
folks
both.
have an institutional knowledge that I don't have yet. So it would be nice to have somebody to say, hey, electricity, what happened with that?
Yeah, 'cause
And-
I do understand, the deeper dive,
Mm.
Christine and Alex, that does make a lot of sense, but I also appreciate the transparency of discussing it all as a board. So maybe bring in more detail than we used to do as a finance committee coming to the board. Okay.
Judy?
Nope, I agree with Lisa. I do think, I love all the information and I did have a couple of questions. But no, I think a finance committee is a good idea because they can do the deeper dive and they can ask the tougher on the spot questions that you probably don't like to answer.
Oh, no, I'm very transparent.
No.
And if I don't,
It's tough when
can't
you're getting
answer it, it's
upshot
because I
left
don't
and
know
right
and I need to learn
But
it.
yeah, no,
so.
I like the idea of a finance committee and then kind of gathering all the information so that we can shoot the quick questions during the meeting and move forward. And record it.
Yeah. So Christine, I know your vote. Brian? Okay.
Next question. In a separate venue and bring it back to us in a quicker kind of readout version. Hammer out the details there and then bring it publicly what was discussed and addressed, and any other questions here.
Okay. So who wants to sit on the finance committee?
I will.
Kathy, you're invited.
Thank you.
Okay. So Christine? Alex, you have to sit on the finance committee.
Man, Alex, you've got so much knowledge and history with it, and being as the vice chair to just.
Two is good.
So, and then I'll be there. Is that good? Okay. So it would be Alex, myself, and Christine. I think there's still room if other people want to join. Okay. Okay. So should we give it a try for like a 3-month cycle and see where we're at? All right. Okay. Is that what we'll do like we did before? Prior to?
Just as a point, should the committee be balanced?
I don't think it has to be balanced. I think it has to have minority representation. And so I think I serve as minority representation, except that am I ex officio?
Here,
So-
so there needs to be one.
I think I did speak with, you know, I spoke with Antoinette about this, before we disbanded the last committees. And her answer surprised me, but I'd have to either go back through my notes or call Antoinette again to find out if I did in fact make that minority representation or not. But is there someone else who's available to come if I don't count as minority representation?
I think you're allowed to serve on a committee and be ex officio. You're that of any committee that we have, but I do believe you're allowed to serve on the committee and satisfy and
There's no voting
satisfy
aspect. The big issue with
minority
ex officio has to
representation.
do with the idea of voting.
Right.
Wherein you can't, if you're ex officio, you can't vote. You can only break a tie in a
Right.
vote.
And I think that that's
since
why
there's no-
Antoinette said that I counted.
There's no voting, there's no voting in a committee meeting for us.
But when I had that conversation with her, we then the next meeting disbanded our committee. So I'm going to circle back to her, make sure it works, make sure we're good. And if we're not good, then
Figure it out.
I need more people. Okay. All
Not a
right.
big deal.
Thank you all. Other questions? Thanks.
Right, and if you see from me, if one of us
Okay.
wants to step in.
I appreciate it. Judy, you said you had some questions for Kathy?
No,
You good?
well, I do. I actually have a question about the electric bill and,
Yeah.
no, Mom. They just can't hear me. They do,
They are
right?
quiet, but I think people must hear us.
And I don't want to yell. Going back to, how are we going to look for the electricity costs this year? Like, I know that we had that issue, but I know that this public benefits thing is really huge. And then they just approved a rate increase last night and I know our budget. So are we going to be in trouble with the electricity costs this year?
I don't know the answer to that,
Okay.
and I'm not quite sure. So I'll have to look at it. Yes. I just saw July and went, holy smokes, what happened?
All right, any other questions on our 2024 report? July 2024? Okay. Do we want to go ahead and vote to move that to, or, we do that at the next meeting, don't we? Do we want to do it now because we only have one meeting this month?
Do we have to wait for the auditors to come in at all?
No, we move it monthly to
Oh, gotcha.
to the Board of Finance.
Mm.
We don't actually vote on the number. Remember, we're just advancing the report monthly to the Board of Finance. But we also have the July report. Right, I'm talking about the July report.
I'd like to make a motion to move the July report to the Board of Finance.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And abstentions? Okay. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. And of course, once we're back to 2 meetings a month, I think this makes this process a little easier. Moving on to the non-lapsing report. Kathy, thank you again for making yet another report for us.
So the non-lapsing, that just as I had reached out to Susan Pike to ask if I could get something from the town, so I knew that what we had was correct. And then just before we walked in, I received from Susan what they have on the town books versus what we have on our books. So I just like the opportunity to go back and take a look at it, because the biggest thing that's sticking out for me is the $49,000 from the fiscal year 23-24 that came in from last year's So, and I don't see that on her report. It looks like we tick and tie out on everything else, but I do want to reach out to her and ask her where that is on her report to make sure that we're in sync with the town.
And I do notice that you added a few things that had been missing from our non-lapsing account that we had approved.
The Cub Club.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think the wellness day expenses.
Yes.
So that was helpful. The only thing that was confusing to me, towards the bottom of the page, it says expenditures under consideration. And then I think underneath that is doing, Jamie, what you had requested, right? Like the pieces that we hadn't really spent yet.
Yeah, I like, just to take it to the playground as an example, right? Like we had said up to 7,500. And so as 75,000, thank you. As we had checked them off or they had come in, I think we were just kind of seeing like, how much do we have left after it arrived and installation?
So when I looked at that, Jamie, it looked like $70,000 had been appropriated and we had spent 68,000 through June.
Okay. Okay, so that's right on par.
Yeah.
Great. That's great.
I think, can you just remove that expenditures under consideration because the items
Sure.
underneath it, we actually have approved. We just haven't necessarily
Spent
spent
it.
it.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Approved.
Expenditures approved.
Will do.
Any other questions on the report?
So just when you're looking at the town one, I'm just curious because I swear we approved a bunch of xylophones, but I don't know where they are on here,
Xylophone.
just to keep in mind.
Did we
Because I
do it?
thought that was one of our non-lapsing
It was.
expenditures, but I can never find it.
Okay. Was it in this fiscal year we're
No.
closing? It was.
Was it?
Okay.
It was this, no, I thought it
What?
was 2 falls ago, I
Oh.
thought.
What,
Xylophone.
We did keyboards this year, but we had done xylophones
Right.
when we first hired the elementary music teacher. The first year she
Is-
was here, I think that was at least 2 years ago, right? Noonan retired 2 years ago.
Okay, I will take a look.
So 22, 23.
could that have, I don't remember, but we could check. Could that have been one of the items that you approved, but we ended up spending Board of Ed money by accident and then we took it off the list because
General fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
could happen.
that may
That-
explain why it's not on the list.
Right.
We'd have to go back and look, but I think
Yeah, that sounds vaguely familiar.
I will take a look though. like-
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll figure it out if you have the list from the town.
I love.
Find the xylophones.
As you're saying, you're trying to balance things out. It's one of those things where I was like, does it really matter that it's back on a list from 2 years ago? But if you're trying to balance it with the town, then it kind of does matter.
It does.
And so there was money spent on xylophones that was supposed to be from non-lapsing. I don't know.
We started the fiscal year in balance with the town before the transfer of the non-lapsing from last year. So it's only the last 12 months that I have to get in sync. And I really, to me, looking at it quickly, it's the non-lapsing funds from last year, from the last fiscal year. So I'll just ask Susan about those.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions about the non-lapsing? I think it's finally taking shape to look like it's supposed to look. Okay. So then if we're done with that, let's talk about Troy's non-lapsing proposal list. Troy, do you want to lead this conversation? It's your list.
yeah, sure. I know you guys like to spend money on your non-lapsing account to meet the needs of the kids, and enhance the education. This is a draft list that the administrators and I have been, working on. So it's, it's not complete. We don't have costs for everything, but we do have costs for some of the things. We, across the hall here, where Kim Haggerty is going to have an office for professional development. We do want to supply that room with you know, some resources that can be used for professional development. You can see some of the things listed here. And what we would hope the board would allow us to spend up to $5,000 to equip that room to be a better professional development center. Other things on here, we have a cost, at the elementary school, they need some area rugs. 3 of them, for 4th grade, and they would like that. They think with, $1,250, they could do that. Some chairs, because they have, become in disrepair, 750. This here is a, workshop that, you know, maybe we can get some more information on before you might, vote to do this. But we did have, Jane Servideo that went to Alaska, actually, who's going to probably come to a future board meeting, explain her experience. But she learned about this opportunity in the Rockies in Colorado that a couple of our teachers are interested in attending, but it's costly. But that could be something that, you know, could be worth it. And then, there's a roll mat, tumble roll mat for cheerleading practice that, cheerleaders would like. A L screen for baseball, so the pitcher doesn't get hit by line drives, during batting practice. This, Shimpo Pug Mill, which makes clay like new, it takes the air out of it again and makes it so it's, ready, to do some things. That was on a list before, but we never got it. It is very costly. But the art teachers could use that at Wheeler. And so those are the things we have a cost to. I wanted to just point out the one particular thing on the list that doesn't have a cost yet, and it's the last thing. Well, actually, the last 2 things. I think that the paving, the parking lot between the schools, I think we should do that. And I think,
I actually have a cost.
okay, That's right.
So the paving, we asked for that temporary fix, and the paving isn't in anyone's budget. Troy had identified that it was something that he'd really like to finish off because that parking lot's really, really helpful and it's used. So we need it and we're going to need it forever.
and it gets potholes.
Right. So
Okay.
I spoke with Bob Carlson, who's assistant foreman, Alan Ladd, got just a general idea of how much it would cost. So it's $22,000 to pave that. Now, something to consider, and while it's not official yet, there is some talk that there's going to be another steep grant. If that does happen, and we do get picked up in that, obviously we spend a lot less, but we'd likely have to wait until spring or summer. Now, we're not in an emergency situation. And when I see that we only deposited 18,000 into our non-lapsing, I'd hate to rush to spend 22 just to know that we could have spent maybe 4 or 5. So I don't know if it's worth, it's a gamble, because if there is no steep grant, then we're sort of stuck with it, but just something to consider. So it would be capital. And it's not necessarily used for, it's not the kind of things that we purchase for our students, but it is something that we are saying we need for our school. So it's that weird line, right? So like our athletic fields. So we're paying for that. That's capital. We're not asking the town to pay for that in a different way than through our budget. We are, and is that parking lot the same thing? Maybe, I don't know. But what I know is that it's not in anyone's budget. And
Where did the 22 grand number come from? That seems like, I mean, that space seems smaller than my driveway, which I did for 6 grand, and that included all the fill underneath it. Like, it seems crazy
We
that
have to go
20.
to bid and do the whole.
oh yeah,
process,
we'd
right?
for sure have to
22
go to
grand
bid,
just,
but
especially
have
since it's
the-
already leveled and everything is
so
kind of.
it's not really, and all that has to be removed. So I have
Oh, okay. So that's,
the Bob
they gotta
sent
pull back
me
everything that's down and
Yeah,
then
Bob
fill
sent
it.
me
Okay.
the actual quote from Alan, and then additionally, it's another $600 to line it, but the town will do it. So it's prep and pave 9,500 square feet, remove the millings where they meet existing asphalt for proper grade at an 8-foot width. I don't know what that means. Fine grade the parking lot, and then pave with class 2 asphalt at 2.5 inches, compacted to 2 inches. So that's what I know about that. And I don't know that much about asphalt, so.
Nor do I. It just seemed, in my head, I was like, but you already have it all set up to be, but I guess it's not set up to be paved then.
So I guess the question would be, do we think we can hold off, make it work, which gives us some time to talk a little bit more about how are things like paving going to be paid for in the future while still giving us a parking lot, even though it's not the exact parking lot that we want to end up having.
I think we've made it. Oh, go
I
ahead.
don't think it hurts us to hold off
Yeah.
and kind of see where things go, whether a steep grant's available. I mean, it's milling, so we can find, I'm sure there are millings around that if we have to fill in potholes here and there, we can fill those in, in the short term to figure out, can we somehow find a substantial savings, through grants or things like that to then do it the way that we want it. I mean, it might cost us an extra couple of grand if we wait to, with the cost of things going up, but at the same time, I would rather, I'd like to take the gamble here and potentially make, a greater savings by finding the money through grants.
We've adapted and adjusted this long without having it done, that I think it's worth the chance of seeing if we can get a steep grant for it.
I would like to see it not come from the Board of Education budget.
Yes.
I only went to a couple of the capital committee meetings, but my understanding of the definition of capital, and Sarah, I don't want to call you out, but you've been on the committee the whole time. But it meets the criteria in what I understand, and that it costs at least $10,000 and it has more of up to a 5-year life, more than a 5-year life. So that would define capital in my mind, where it would go to the town. I'm getting a thumbs up over there.
So my understanding is that while that is the working definition that the Board of Selectmen adopted in 2023, we actually buy capital stuff. So not every capital thing will be purchased by the town. If you look at our non-lapsing account and even some of the stuff that we're talking about currently, not just the stuff that we've done in the past, we are purchasing capital items all the time. And so I think that the fact that it meets capital alone doesn't necessarily make it that clear, but I think that this is one of the things. These aren't whiteboards. They're not the smart boards, right? I guess they're not structural. I'm not really sure what you would call them, but they're not things that our students necessarily need for learning. So I think it's worth a conversation if we're willing to wait it out a little.
Well, but I was going to say the secondary piece to that is that if we put this off into a capital process, it could be 5 years from now when that moves to the top of the capital list. It's not necessarily like we can define it as capital, but if we want it done this year,
I think it could be done this year. I think
it certainly could be,
I think it's
but
worth
they
the
have a
time.
list in this whole plan. The whole point of this plan was to set out these expenses in a way that would allow for it to happen over a period of years, in which they set that up with the deposits ahead of time, right? And I'm not saying like I think it's entirely worth the conversation. I just think that when it comes down to it, personally, if we get into next summer, there's a steep grant available and it's going to cost us $6,000 and we're going to get it paved. That to me is a good use of non-lapsing funds to be able to make a more functional parking lot for the events and things going on. But that's.
And the not getting it done this year doesn't, as I understand it, have anything to do with our process, but rather the paving plants shut down when it starts to get cold and they don't start up again until the spring. So even if a steep grant were to appear tomorrow, and we got wrapped into it, by the time we got the okay, it might be too cold to pave. And so it would wait till the spring. So I think it's very possible that we do all of this. I just think it's a nice opportunity for us to continue to talk about how it's funded. And I think how this is funded sort of sets the stage for how the next thing we need paved is funded. And so I think it's worth a talk.
That's what
I think
that's
we
what
need
I'm
to
suggesting.
step back on the entire non-lapsing at this point, knowing that if we're putting about 18 to 20 in now, seems like that is the norm with what the non-lapsing will continue to do moving forward. we're past the couple of one-offs where we had those large dumps, and we've been saying that over and over again. This year and last year, this is the reality now. So what's the process with the list? Is it whatever teacher gets Troy's ear first gets a thing, or is it by department? Are we looking at each department and saying, okay, this year the art department has, you know, because it's, what's the process for somebody to come in, ask for money? Is it, you know, because art, we feel like we're funding, and which is great, but is there somebody else that just doesn't ask? Or maybe is scared to ask, or doesn't even know they can ask. So what is the process for each department to get a piece of the pie, basically based on need? I'm personally a little bit concerned about the PD piece. What are we doing now for science at K-3? How developed are we? Are there local programs? Are there other programs that might be closer? So I think the list is amazing. I'd love to see you guys prioritize it, Troy, not us. And then know a little bit more about the process, because that fund is going to dwindle quickly.
Yeah, the process really has been that my administrative team puts this together, and hopefully they're consulting with their teachers and staff about what their needs are and wants. But we can talk about the process more.
Yeah,
Define it.
some of the stuff, I think we should just use regular budget, like rugs and chairs. If they're broken, just replace them. I don't see why we need to have.
And to Christine's point, I
Yeah.
think we need to look more at the needs before we look at the wants. Like, I understand that. I mean, there are some things that we do want that would make things a lot easier, but let's focus on the needs first, because the pie is getting a lot smaller.
And real quick, Troy, don't we have money in our lunch budget or in our food budget
Yes,
that could cover a salad bar? I
That
thought we had a lot.
probably, that's true. And
Okay.
that's
So maybe
absolutely, that can come
cafeteria.
up. And remember, this list is really a draft list that we haven't gone through and prioritized.
I agree. I think we need to kind of think about prioritizing, but I also want to circle back to that conversation about the clubs and drama club, and like, are their needs also being addressed in terms of like sound system and things that maybe aren't part of a department that we could look at as well.
So I think Troy circled back. I know Brian and Chet had some concerns about softball and their setup. So Troy did circle back to the AD and some coaches. And
Right.
that is the request for the batting cage. They don't want a bullpen.
That's correct.
And the thing is, the batting cage can serve as a bullpen, because the smallest batting cage you can get for the high school level is about 55 feet long. So if they ever wanted to use that as a dual purpose, I know I had in the past with my own fields. So I mean, the batting cage is probably something that they're going to use more frequently than the bullpen in many regards, especially during practice. So, I mean, that for the cage, for the tunnel itself, plus the netting, you're talking probably about $5,000 plus installation, give or take.
Yeah, and that is a spring sport, so there could be time.
And Troy, I know you were gonna circle back on Jamie's question about
Yeah.
the sound system.
So,
at the
so Rob
elementary-
tells
at
me
the-
that the sound
elementary.
system at the elementary school functions fine for in the gym and on the stage, and they don't really need any upgrades at this point in time.
So I know that this is a total draft list. And a couple of things stuck out for me about why aren't we using regular education budget funds for that? So, or why didn't we budget for them? So the rugs, I think Alex pointed out the rugs and the chairs. And so maybe it's just because you found out late.
That's exactly
And
it.
that- and
Because
that
when we put the
totally can
budget
happen,
together,
yeah.
we're talking like, we start in November,
For sure.
December, getting the request, and they don't necessarily know that the rug's not gonna make it and
Right.
be all frayed and everything by the end of
Right.
the year.
And then the workshops, I love the idea of funding professional development. I just want to make sure, because it is a line item in our budget, that we're funding that line item appropriately if there are other opportunities. the Chromebook cart, I was so excited that we funded technology. And then I saw this request and I thought, shoot, did we not fund it appropriately?
Well, I've seen this during testing because so many students forget to charge their Chromebooks and they have to bring them in for the SAT or SAT, that some schools have opted to having these Chromebook carts and having the kids bring them in, or having their spares in those carts charging. So if a student has that technical issue during the day, they have one at the ready and they're not
Uh,
having to sign a kid out, having to fill out the anomaly reports because something didn't go right during the testing. So a cart or two like this, they can put like 60, 2 carts can hold up to 60 Chromebooks, which would more than cover a class taking the SAT here.
The other thing, the last item on here, I just wanted to mention to you, and I think, later down the road, we could talk about it more if there's an interest, but my administrative team and I spent quite a bit of time talking about school safety. And I know we've mentioned school resource officer before. Allison Reyes and I, about a little over a year ago, went to a informative presentation by the Secret Service at Westerly Yacht Club. And kind of after that, we were convinced, like, all right, schools that have a school resource officer or potentially more equipped to respond if something happens, because usually it's like 2 minutes that there's a response time, and people from the outside just can't get there in time. However, we also realize the community, kind of just the strength of the community connection piece, and just the relationships that students can have with another adult, and the value of someone keeping an eye on people coming and going, even if they're unarmed, right? Just a value in someone just keeping an eye on people coming and going on the campus. And we began to talk about this idea, we called it community safety liaison. And we just wondered if it might be, if someone could focus on that visibility, be there during drop-off pickup, be there at some school events, do some restorative work with kids, kind of look at attendance issues, and there can be attendance issues, help out with that. Maybe conduct some home visits, maybe help with residency issues. If residency is in question, someone to kind of help us look into those things. Those are just some of the ideas we talked about. So I'm just mentioning it, not to get in a big discussion right now, but just to kind of plant the seed with you and share with you that my administrative team began to talk about this. I'm not suggesting that you maybe spend non-lapsing funds on it, but.
That was my only comment.
However,
That's
I
valid.
wanted to just put it on a list just to plant the seed, and it can come off of this list, and it could go on a future Board of Ed agenda. It could go in a future budget if we're interested in having that kind of staff person.
So Troy, are you looking for us to act on any of these tonight, or do you feel like after the conversation that this is a draft, you want to go back, you want to prioritize, and you want to see if there are any other options to fund some of these?
I do think it would mean a lot to fund a couple of the smaller items on here, like the area rugs and the primary chairs, just to say, hey, look, we want you to get these things before the beginning of the year and have them. These are not things that we're putting in the budget. They're relatively small values. And maybe even the tumble mat for cheerleading practice. It's a relatively small item. I think the baseball, softball stuff can hold off. I think any workshops or even the Educator Resource Center could hold off. I think we could, start with what we have and what we can find. And we could then look at that again. I'll talk to my administrative team and prioritize some of these other things. But I think a couple of the small items might be worth considering approving. That's my take.
I'll just stick with what I had before and any the repair or replace of what you already have that's broken, I would use regular budget. It's my thought, but if you're gonna do something new, like mats, okay, that makes sense. Or PD, since that's innovative, makes sense for an appropriation through this account, but I don't wanna, I don't know. For repairs of stuff that you already have.
I agree,
think-
Alex, and it's $2,000 on chairs and rugs. I think we could go to our budget this early in the
Yeah, I
season.
would,
Mhm.
rather than use this account, just my thought.
And see where we end up on PD at the end of
Sure.
the year, things like that, if that has to move over to non-lapsing or.
Mhm.
For things that are new that we have, softball, baseball, whatever, I think that'd be perfect, account to handle some of that stuff as we did in the past. Storage unit makes sense.
Well, I was gonna say the storage unit and the sign, I just had questions. How desperately in need are we of the storage? Because the storage unit to me was a relatively inexpensive purchase that solved storage needs last year. This is another storage unit as well?
Yeah, that's the idea, but honestly, we don't have a figure there, and partly we need to talk about it more. I wouldn't want you to vote on that
Okay.
particular item now. We are actually cleaning out the locker rooms and the surrounding offices there and seeing if we can use the space more efficiently. So we don't yet really know if we need the storage unit.
And the sign, is this because of the class of?
Yes, class of 2011 or something, and we did try to contact them.
It looked like contact was made.
Yes, it was. Yeah, there was some. Yeah, I'll have to check with Kristen about what the exact contact communication was.
Like I would be open in terms of the sign as like matching funds with the class. I mean, it's a class that's already shut down and not doing their, I don't know what they have in an account, but if they were going to replace, I think that matching funds or assisting, still allowing it to be through the class, but doing something I think would be wonderful, just so it still stays from the class, but perhaps they don't have the funding on hand to do it, but.
Does anyone want to make any motions?
But just one more item, how about the pug mill? Is that something that would really, get?
Just bought a pretty expensive kiln for art, and the pug mill, yeah, I'm sure they could use it. Is it absolutely necessary? No. But it would be a luxury, I think, to have. I mean, the art teacher could come and maybe explain if, if the art teachers really want it, maybe they can come and, tell you why. Because I don't fully understand.
Are you comfortable with taking the funds needed for the area rugs, primary chairs, and the roll mat out of the existing budget, out of our current budget?
No,
Okay. And the Educator Resource Center, is that at the top of your list? Is that something?
that's something that's important for us because we want to get it going. We want to really make that a nice professional development room.
I do have one question about that because it is talking about supplies for PD out of there, and that should be something that comes out of the regular education budget for PD. Don't we have a line item just for PD and supplies for it? So that's really probably where that should be coming from.
Yeah,
Given that it's something new, Troy, and it sounds like this is about startup for something that'll continue for a long time,
A lot of it's about startup.
is
yes.
this something that you might consider having Kim write a grant for the Ed Foundation?
Yes, that's
That-
a good idea.
That might be a
That's a great
better way to go about it because they're looking for innovative grants at this point.
Feels like a good fit.
That is a great idea. I mean, I would be more comfortable you move forward and purchase a couple of the items that teachers are gonna want for the start of the school year, which are those small items. And the reason why I'm not comfortable just, hitting the budget right now is we just heard that like the electric bill was way bigger than we thought for July, right? I'm gonna ask you in a moment to hire a teacher at a higher step than we had planned in a future agenda item here tonight. So in my mind, I want to be cautious with the spending. I don't want to dig a hole in the budget in September.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion, that we take out of non-lapsing account, $1,250 for the area rugs for the elementary school. Up to $1,250 for the elementary school, up to $750 for the primary chairs, up to $800 for the tumble roll mat, up to $500 for, the screen for baseball.
Anyone want to second that?
I think that different people had different issues with different things. I might break
we
it up
do it one at a
and do
Yeah.
one at a time.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll sit here ready for you, Lisa.
All right, I make a motion to spend up to $1,250 out of the non-lapsing account for area rugs for the elementary school.
I second that.
Any discussion? My only comment is that I want teachers to have area rugs in their classroom and I want them to have it for the start of the year. Perhaps there's a way that we could get eyes on that stuff sooner, Troy. I know you have to budget so early. But I'm with Alex. Let's get those things in the regular budget moving forward, but let's get the teachers that stuff now.
I agree with you, Steph. I just moving forward, I think we need to really start getting a much more solid plan with this account, knowing it's going to get leaner and leaner.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? Alex, abstain? Okay, motion carries.
Just so we remember, that's all.
I make a motion to spend up to $750 out of the non-lapsing account for primary chairs.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just echo the same thing said previously. I think everybody's kind of on the same page with this, that moving forward, it should be coming out of the budget, but we want the kids to have what they need to have, so.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Alex, abstentions. Okay,
I make a motion to spend up to $800 out of the non-lapsing account for a tumble roll mat.
I second.
discussion?
What are all the mats at the elementary school? There's stacks and stacks of mats along the wall in the gym. Do we know what those are used for?
They're used for other things, but cheer practice
The-
doesn't take place over at the elementary school,
the-
and to haul mats is really, really difficult.
And the tumble roll, I think, would be much thicker because we're talking about something that they would be able to.
And we
under.
have the coach.
Sherry, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, as I went on and the dog starts barking, I had no idea you were going to talk about cheer mats today. So, so the roll mats that are there, we have enough for almost a full set. For years, I had no idea this was being discussed. For years, we just need one more for a full set. The panel mats that are there are the elementary mats for people, but the roll mats are for cheer. So we do need one more, would create a whole set, and we share them with middle school, which the program is going to start running again. So it would be very convenient to have more. I know Byrne did ask me for the expense of a new mat. I didn't realize that that was a discussion for non-lapsing, so this is wonderful if that is something that it could be done. Because that would just give us a full set of mats, which we typically borrow from another school if we have events that need a full set for.
Thanks, Sherry. That was a really helpful explanation. Appreciate
Thank
it. Any other discussion about the mats? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay.
And finally, I make a motion to spend up to $500 for an L screen for baseball.
I second.
Discussion?
Yeah, well, one it's up to, and I mean, this is a very high-end number for an L screen. That's like what you're using at MLB level is a $500 one, maybe 800 at most for pros. You can get a very good L screen that's going to last 15, 20 years for about $250.
So you feel like we're going to get a better deal on this than
If they
500?
spend 500 on an L screen, I will lose my mind because they can get two for that price. I will. And I will be reticent to approve any athletic expenditure coming out.
Should I amend my motion to up to 300?
this is what they're asking for, but I want them to shop around because I can go online right now to Anthem Sports and I can find 8 L screens that are under $300.
We also were told that urgency, it's a spring sport. We don't
Right.
need it right this minute.
I have no problem approving it to make sure that it gets ordered and comes in time. I understand sometimes there are delays, but at the same
I'll
time,
rescind my motion at this time.
Does anybody else have any other motions that they want to make about non-lapsing? Okay. To round out this discussion, I think that we are all in a little bit of shock about that change in number down to 18,000. Christine, I think you're right. Like maybe this is where we start to see what this normal deposit looks like, and maybe it's that. And I know, Troy, we want to talk about capital items, and we still aren't sure how we're going to work out this town stuff. So I really appreciate you bringing us this list. I think it's important that we start seeing this at the beginning of the year. We want to get stuff in the kids' hands. So we'll keep working on it, but thank you.
And if we can get a number for the batting cage, I think that would also be another one of those things that to order early and make sure that we have somebody set up to be able to install and everything else.
yeah,
I would
it
needs to
happily
be
make a
soup to
motion
nuts.
nuts. It needs to be cage, tunnel, piping, and installation.
Okay. So let's move on to another fun subject, more non-lapsing. This is, I think, easier. The memorandum of agreement that we entered into with the Board of Finance in June of 2020, I believe now is something that we can look to dissolve based on the new statute taking out the piece about the Board of Finance providing some oversight. So basically the new statute says any Board of Education can do that. It still can't exceed 2%. It still can only be for educational purposes, and it still has to be authorized by the Board of Ed. So the difference is that the Board of Finance doesn't have to give us permission to do this anymore. And so Christine and I actually talked about it. She said, hey, don't we have to get rid of this? And I've been watching what other boards are doing, and other boards that had this are getting rid of it because we don't need it anymore. So what I'd like from you all is you're backing that A, we don't want to have it anymore. And then B, that you're okay with me going to the Board of Finance to just have this conversation with them on the 21st. So we're all on the same page about what we're doing and the why.
Is the statute up to 4% or is it 2%?
2%.
Okay.
I make a motion to remove the MOA on the non-lapsing account with the Board of Finance.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can we make a motion just to remove it unilaterally, or does it have to be?
I'm not going to go to the Board of Finance
Well, I'm
for
just wondering about the
permission.
wording of the motion, if it should be to make a motion to take the step to rescind the memorandum of agreement, or even if we need a motion to do it, or if you just need our
I think
general
it'd be nice to
consensus.
have it on record, just that we are dissolving it from our end, right? We no longer
Dissolve
are
it,
are
maybe.
going
Right.
to be
So
in.
we're just,
All right, so
Okay.
I make a motion to dissolve the MOA on the non-lapsing account. That'd be-
I'll second.
Any further discussion? And I think I just want to go, I want to make sure that the Board of Finance knows that we're not trying to do anything underhanded or sneaky. It's just that the statute changed and we need to formalize some of this stuff.
well, and it's now just written into state law, so that's what
Right.
we're basing the agreement on, not a separate legal document.
Right. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain. Wonderful. Okay. Troy put together a document about a capital plan. It was, yeah, it's the one that was added to the packet. This isn't, I know it sounds a little much tonight, but this is important because that new draft document from that capital committee talks about us doing this in October and July. So obviously this year, no one was doing it in July, but we have to be ready in October with our capital requests. So Troy, I see on here tunnel repair, but that was picked up by the town last year,
Good, but they haven't done it yet.
but it's on their list, so it can.
Oh, it's
come off
on
of
their
ours.
list. Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
They took it last year.
Okay, okay.
There you go. We can remove that.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, we need to take a look at this list and we need to, at least take a first crack at it.
This list, again, is a very rough draft. I simply took the old list that was attached to the non-lapsing account and I merged it with a brainstorming list with my administrative team. And I didn't put like fiscal years on it or anything because it's just a draft. I think that we had planned on just kind of giving you this to think about some things. You may have some ideas to add. And I think at the retreat, what the plan was to really dig into this and prioritize and maybe, put them in an order of, all right, this is a 5-year, this is a 10-year, this is a 20-year, and this is immediate. That kind of thing. So really, it's just a draft. So totally open to ideas and I can add them to the list. And then we could discuss it further now or we can wait. It's up to you.
So the meals transport, that one jumps out at me. How far is it driving?
Which one?
The meals transport vehicle.
Oh, yeah, it drives, 50 yards, maybe 75. Because it doesn't always start. It has mechanical issues. It's old. It's
Wait,
a 1997 vehicle and they
97 is a vintage year, Troy.
well.
It actually was a topic at the Board of Selectmen's meeting
It
that
was.
the highway garage is spending some time
Yeah,
working on.
repairing it.
this. There's a lot of
Keeping
maintenance
it
to be
going.
done on the van, I
Yeah,
guess.
it may become inefficient to keep it going. Or
Based on,
maybe it won't
Could it-
go.
Could it be a minivan?
I'd have to check with the food service
Okay.
to see what kind of room they need to move the meals. They move food from the elementary school was prepared to Wheeler with this van, with this old ambulance.
Well, just because I know that large cities, when they do their summer meals program,
Yeah.
they're driving out to locations using minivans.
It could be.
So just as a thought, I mean, when you're looking at savings, could we find out what the actual need is? So we aren't just buying because this is what we've had because it's what we inherited potentially.
I was thinking you can use a tractor and a trailer that's environmentally controlled. You can make, I think. a lot
Solar.
cheaper. Yeah.
Solar powered.
Whatever. Well, not solar power. I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be a van that you have to service.
So North Stonington of you,
register and-
Alex, that you want us to use a tractor.
I'm just
Oh,
saying, you put
okay.
a nice trailer on it that has
Yeah,
some
it's like
electricity.
fresh
to it,
from the farm
Whatever.
meal.
Because we did have a sports van on there at one point. So to keep in mind, are we looking now for priority wise? Is it a sports van or is it?
Yeah. Okay. So
Van?
the van, we call it special education. I think that is the sports van. And, but could double for, special education needs as well. But that first item would be that sports van.
I think maybe instead of having it be a special ed van, can we have it be a student activities van or something?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just because to me, otherwise, I think
Yeah.
it doesn't in my mind represent what I thought
Yeah.
Correct.
we had going with that.
That's
Yeah, I don't know
Student
why.
activities van.
Remember, this is just a rough draft that multiple people are adding to.
And-
So I think that, yeah, that is a sports van.
Okay. And then
No, student activity van.
student activity van. I think student activity
Yeah,
van.
and it could be
encompasses-
used to transport some.
When it can be field trips
It's a lot
for
of
a small
children,
class in
different-
order to get somewhere or something like that as well. It's just
Yeah.
like some
Small field trips.
a vehicle that's usable.
And transportation is grant funded sometimes for special ed and
Yep.
things like that. So I'd like to keep that line item off of capital if possible.
Yeah.
Special ed, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the fencing on the athletic
Put it in the budget.
fields, I thought the reason we didn't have fencing was because they're dual use fields wherein we use the softball field in order to be able to turn into a middle school soccer field. Or is this separate fencing?
I think it's separate fencing along like the perimeter of the property that's also around athletic fields. I believe that's what, but I can get. more
I would
detail on
also
it.
then double check just on the idea that if you're going to do that, then you may put the cross country course side of the otherwise set of the athletic fields, and we don't necessarily want to set up a fence that puts all of our cross-country runners on the outside of a fence,
That's a good point.
but
Well,
I'll have to
and-
check on that to see what exactly the idea behind that is.
The same thing with the playground. We discussed this at length when kind of funding and building the playground, and it was meant to be a community playground.
Okay.
Because the community paid for it.
Yeah.
So I think that might not be in line with the mission.
Yeah. I think part of the reason is, I think, keep the wildlife out
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
for
Bears
safety
on
reasons,
field
like
day.
bears,
Yeah.
for example.
well, and I know during the security audit walkthrough that for some reason I did a long time ago with some guy.
Yes, you did.
I think this was still when Peter was here, maybe. you know?
Yes, it was.
But one of the big things that came up was that we don't have a fenced in back area. So, I mean, I understand the security aspect of it, but I do know that, in my own school district I teach in, one of the biggest complaints the town has regularly is when the playgrounds are accidentally locked when they should be open for community use. So just be aware.
Speaking of fences, a couple of the preschool teachers have made an observation that the preschool playground being so close to the parking lot and preschool kids being runners, maybe like a 3-foot fence going around with the part facing the school open to kind of keep them safe in that area instead of jetting off into the parking lot. Not that I think that that would happen, but those kids, mine included, can be a handful. They're runners. They're definitely runners, but that was one of the things that they had mentioned was maybe just a short fence around that. My other thing I wanted to mention was on this list, going back to the parking lot, should we add the paving to the parking lot, the estimated 22,000 onto this list?
Yeah.
Sure. One of the things, Troy, that I know here, is that you talk about an outdoor sport court at Wheeler, basketball and pickleball. So one of the projects that's going on
Mhm.
now is that pickleball right here at 298. They just paved it. So I think it's going to be a basketball pickleball
Oh,
court
yep.
here. And while I like these ideas, I think it's important that as we're looking at our small town and the physical space that we're in, right? We've got rec and we've got basketball there. We've got pickleball, basketball here. We don't want to duplicate things that we already have. We want to
Right.
fill in with things that we're missing. So that's something that's happening on this side of the street.
Good.
I'm most comfortable talking about this list when it's all prioritized. I'm feel I'm
Yeah.
feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what what the
Mhm.
needs are and
Yeah,
know
I
what I
didn't
mean?
really anticipate a lot of
Yeah.
discussion tonight. I just wanted to plant the seed that here we have a list. You can start thinking about it and thinking of other ideas.
So we'll discuss this list again on 9/28, but with it being 9/28, when we discuss the list, it's like 3 days away from October when we're going to have to produce our list. So if people have
Mhm.
questions or concerns, can they get those to Troy ahead of time? And Troy, can you make sure that this list is prioritized
Sure.
in sort of that 1, 3, 5 year format?
Yep.
So that we have something to go with.
Yep.
I love
Because
the idea. I love the idea of a performance auditorium over here. If that would actually be a functional process.
So yeah, now that you mentioned that, picture this. This space, you see this space right here? Those columns apparently don't support weight. They could be removed. You could have a stage right here. You could have bleachers going up on a slope all over there. You probably have 300 chairs, right? And you could have concerts, chorus concerts, band concerts, theatrical productions right here with an audience. In fact, I think behind the audience, you would still have room for a meeting table like this with the windows for atmosphere. You actually have natural light.
Yeah, I'm planning on being on the stage. I like it. We need to be on the stage. With lighting, yep. Stop it.
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
Well, you would have options. You could meet in the back, or you could meet on the stage. And you could have a huge audience. Think of all the people from the town that would love to come and watch the meetings if they had like a nice elevated chair and they
I-
could look down upon.
Honestly though, like the joking aside with the process of like, oh no, we want to be on stage, like the idea that instead of sitting in half of a gymnasium with like plastic all over the floor and chairs set up to have an actual
It's a
space.
huge space.
We have such an amazing drama department from the elementary
Right?
school
Look
up.
at the height.
It would
Just remember, it's limited to 220 people.
Is
It's a
it?
small space.
Is that?
And
what
then I
it-
think
I-
the other
that
piece
is-
about it is that this isn't ours. And so this would be something that obviously would have to happen, not as a school project,
It's a collaboration.
right? Yeah. We're not allowed to change the room.
Okay, well, I haven't actually mentioned it. It did come up at one of the
You just
joint
mentioned
IT
it.
meetings. I just mentioned it. And we did
Surprise.
discuss at a joint IT meeting, and I know the IT staff are really excited about the possibility.
Well, if you have the IT staff on board, the rest is cake, right?
Well,
be no
I
problem.
just think, you know, to build a $20 million separate performance auditorium somewhere would be costly. I think this could be less costly to renovate the space. No.
Whole discussion about why we had to build a new school.
Oh, okay. All right. So I don't have the history.
That's okay.
All the history.
That's
so-
okay. So we
Okay.
look forward to your priorities.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so Troy, you gave us your framework for leadership and
Yeah.
educator evaluation and
yeah.
support document that we did approve
You did.
already.
Yeah, and here it is. And this has been revised slightly because we did submit it to the state as we're supposed to do after you approved it, as the order we're supposed to do it in. But we got feedback. And the feedback we got was minor. And then Kim Haggerty and I had a meeting with someone at the state. And Kim actually made the changes right during the meeting, small little things like wording about mutually agreed upon goals. There's both an educator and a leader section. And in one section, we didn't have the exact wording that was required by the state. So we had to put it in the section where it was missing. And then there was something about ratings. You're not supposed to have ratings in here. And we still had like highly effective, effective, and ineffective. And so we just changed it to meets and doesn't meet. So now it meets all. We got it. We submitted it with the changes. They approved. They said, yes, it's good. But can you have your Board of Ed just kind of reapprove? And so that I'm asking you, I have this copy here. We took it out of your packet because I made your packet so thick, but if you want to take a look, I went over the changes with you. That's all that really was.
I make a motion to approve the North Stonington Public Schools framework for leader and educator evaluation and support.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to new business.
Wait on that one.
So Lisa, at the last meeting, you had brought up wanting to revisit the idea of non-resident staff allowing their students to be here. So Troy went back and spoke with his administrators and dug a bit into the history. Troy, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, my discussion with the administrative team included some reservations in terms of opening that option again. Just remind you that the option is there, and we just adjusted the Board of Ed policy recently and clarified it because it was a little confusing. But it is any teacher who was hired before June of 2019 is able to have their children attend. So we do have staff members children attending currently. But it had been limited to that even before we clarified it. And so there has been, one of the concerns is there has been 6 years of people not being able to bring their kids. And they really felt like it would be unfair for those people that have missed out on that opportunity all this time. They could have had their kids come during, or because they could, and then they can't, and now they can again. So that missed opportunity. Another concern was class size issues. We do have, for example, 19 kids in each of the 4th grade classrooms this year. And if you had a couple students in the 4th grade who have staff members' kids, you know, you're in the 20s, and we kind of pride ourselves keeping our class size small. And you can't really control that number once you then open it up. We did talk about the space for tuition kids that pay tuition from Voluntown and Preston. And that we do have like 10 to 11 entering 9th graders coming in this year. And so we don't want to get to the point where we got to say no to tuition kids because we're trying to keep the class size low. And there was discussion about, we want taxpayers to continue to support the education budget. And we don't want the perception to be that they're paying more for kids to come for free, who the administrators don't feel like it's really an incentive in hiring teachers, because they feel like teachers don't even thinking about that when we hire them. They're just looking for a job and we hire them. So overall, the administrative team wasn't really in favor of opening that up again. So that's input from them, the team.
And Christine, I hate to put you on the spot, but you were here and had been here when that changed. Do you want to talk about the history?
Sure. To the best that I can remember, but it was a discussion that went on for years. Prior to me being on the board, it came up every year. It came up every budget season from taxpayers that maybe don't have kids in the school, because we are, have to be fiscally responsible for everybody's tax dollar. And it ended up being that we aren't having a hiring issue. It wasn't really a problem getting teachers to come to North Stonington. We did a study on districts across the state that offer this. Very few, if any, offer it. Certainly you can pay tuition if you wanted to bring your child here. But it was a long, extensive process to move away from it. And the prior superintendent had to have many hard conversations and decisions with some teachers. Troy, when he came in, had to have some discussions and make some decisions based on that policy. And I can appreciate a community member bringing it forward, but the teachers haven't brought it forward. The union hasn't brought it forward. The administrators haven't brought it forward. So I think at this point, personally, knowing the work that went into it, I don't see a need to move backwards on that.
Do you want to have some discussion on it? At least you have some stuff you want to talk about.
Well, I certainly respect the thoughts and consideration of the work that the board has done in the past, and how the administrators feel now about it. But I'm a little, I guess it makes me a little sad, because the fact is that it's teachers who want to bring their students, it doesn't really cost any more money. It doesn't, unless you need an additional classroom and an additional teacher, which that had never been the case. And I remember being at the town meetings year after year, with the budget, and people would bring that up, and it was always explained that there really is not a cost to it. It doesn't cost just because so-and-so's students come or don't come. It's not going to change the pendulum of where the budget sits on that. Where I think, gather my thoughts here. I know of one family pretty well that had their student from kindergarten up through graduation. I don't know if should say names, but Probably not. Okay. So this one, they're both teachers and they had a child, you know, go to school, the whole time here. And what they have done and continue to do for our community is they're very dedicated parents, and they dedicated a great deal of time to the town of North Stonington, with the Education Foundation, with coaching. If their child hadn't come to the school, they would have dedicated that time at another school district. And I just serious, you know, it just can't go, I just can't understate what they've meant to our community. Just this one family that I know. And the student has had an excellent outcome. And and more than that, our community has been enriched by their presence and by them being allowed to bring this, you know, their child to school. We would not have had them. So, so that's that. So, I also, you know, I understand, you know, saving the space for tuition kids, but and as important as that is, you know, for our budget and to give back to the town, you know, some revenue to draw in. I think it's a little more important to offer the teachers to bring their student along with them, because the dedication and commitment can remain here in North Stonington. That's what I have to say.
So I was trying to separate out the issues for myself, because I agree with Lisa that anyone who's been in this district for a long period of time will have encountered one or many more of those kids. I can think of 3 off the top of my head, and it's hard in our little town, in our little school, to think about what the school looks like or what our own kids' education might have been like without those kids. And then I think about, like Lisa does, those particular staff members, how connected they seem to be to North Stonington and to our kids here. And I had a really hard time separating out that and the value that those kids and those families bring to our district, with those conversations that we had before. And we really did have them. And so, and then I had to think about things like, are the teachers asking for that in their contract? And if we were to grant that, that's a financial benefit in some way, so that the contract would have to be open. So who's driving this? And is it being driven by the right place? And when Troy then went to speak to his administrative team, they not only seem to not see the benefit, but they see some detriment. And you're right, Lisa, while 2 students, 3 students don't cost us anything, it's the day that that student maybe tips the scale that we need something else, an additional teacher, an additional space. And when we're now doing something that we didn't do before, which is tuition in kids, I feel like that does make a little difference. And so while it was very difficult for me, I know it was really difficult at the time too. And I think that I sit in the camp of reaffirming that decision that the board made in 2019. Do other
So
people
I'm
want to
gonna,
talk?
and I absolutely hear and respect what you're saying there. And um, you had said something before, reaffirming, you had said something about the needs. And I think about this in terms of my district. We take tuition students, we get town dollars, and we allow every member of the school community, not teachers, they could be secretaries, to bring their kids with them to the school at no cost. So what we're talking about is, and I know in our freshman class coming in this year, we have 10 faculty, staff members, kids coming to school. What does that do? That shows a commitment to the school by those parents, that they're willing to bring their own kids there, that they are that invested in it. It shows the community. It shows those sending towns, those partner districts that their kids are coming in on tuition, that this is a place that the teachers want their kids to go, not just work there, but live there. And when I look at a lot of our recent hires, I look at a lot of people who went to school here or had family connected here. That says a lot about this community, its educational community, and what those individuals who come out of here can then bring back to us. I respect the work that was done in 2019. I did not agree with the outcome. I think that there is value in having a school community where teachers can bring their kids in because it keeps them here. It makes it so they can, and I know you're going to cut me off, Christine, so let me finish, please. But Christine, please do not cut me off. I appreciate it. And I also know I work with teachers who do this. So it's not a false statement, Christine. And actually, it was the point that you said that the teachers aren't asking for this in the contract. None of us at the table who are not part of negotiations could know what they actually
I
requested
guess it
during.
didn't come out in the contract and I wouldn't
Okay.
be comfortable. Right. I always come back to the, right. So would that be something because there is a benefit? So now that but would it be now? And so I think about that. And I do think that while we have a great deal of work around policy and all that stuff that we do, there is like the huge piece of our work is around finances as well. And I always think, and this goes back a long time, to it's sort of being drilled into my head. Who is making the request? Where is it originating from? And then do we want as board members to start bringing things to the table organically from ourselves, or do we want this to bubble up? And do we want to, is that something we need to think about? Brian, I believe all those things you're saying. I think it's amazing what NFA is doing. And I think it was amazing when we can do it. And I know, I mean, Mrs. Kessler is sitting in the audience, and Mrs. Kessler for years had her son here before they lived here. And he's one of the kids I think about. I mean, and we talk about, a parent that might be online right now and the value that those people have brought. And you can't, like I said, to me, they're two separate things. We can't deny the impact that this has had or how wonderful it is. I guess what I have to think about is where it's coming from, why it's coming up, and what are the outcomes. And when we go back, just like we did with these policies today, to our superintendent, and he goes back to his administrators to say, can you guide us on this? We're not running this school district. We need to rely on you guys. And they're saying it's not going to be helpful right now. I feel like we have to weigh that too.
So I guess I want to just question, how many students are we talking? Like, do we have a number, a rough estimate?
We would never know.
But I get,
Currently, we do.
what's that?
We do know the current number.
You know the current number. I guess
No.
I'm just trying to project, like, we're not talking 50 kids. Like, if we could get a better estimate on that. But also I want to say that I guess I understand there has been work that was done on this prior in 2019, but now we have district goals. And I feel like this fits within our first district goal of being safe, valued, and a sense of belonging. And so I have an issue where if we don't address it and kind of look at it from that angle, which is what we have been focusing our board on, is these district goals, how can we not address this and look at this as a safe, a place of belonging for the teachers too? It's not, it's the community.
I'd like to say a couple things. The teachers may not ask for it. I think perhaps they don't ask for it because it's not a norm. It's not something that schools usually offer. When I'm thinking about things with our school, with the North Stonington School District, it doesn't matter much to me what other districts are doing, because I feel like we're leaders. And somebody has to be first, whether it's one thing or another. And I didn't realize that NFA did that. I applaud you guys for that. If it's not part of the contract, the negotiation project contract, and it's more of a policy, I think it's worth discussing. Maybe the discussion ends here for us tonight. I realize that, but I would ask that the administrators discuss it a little more. Maybe there's some things that weren't thought of when they decided that it may not be beneficial right now. I don't believe that there was ever a time where the amount of students, although we'll never know how many students, how many teachers would take advantage of this. I don't believe that there was ever a time where any scales were tipped. I don't think that was ever an issue. So I would just like for, maybe a little more consideration for it. Because it is so beneficial, not just to the teacher and the family. And I understand, looking at my notes here, we didn't do it. So there's teachers here who were 6 years who haven't been able to bring their kids. And I understand that, but I don't think that should stop us from doing something better now. I think it's okay to be better, even, better than 6 years ago, or better than 2 years ago, better than yesterday.
My only other comment to that, and I do apologize for cutting you off, but we don't have teachers leaving the district for that reason. So just to clarify, when you say people are leaving, we keep our teachers a very long time. They rarely leave the district to go somewhere else. And they're not, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Troy, but I haven't heard on an exit that they're leaving because they can't, their students aren't here where they work.
I didn't say that.
No, I know you didn't.
No, I wouldn't worry about that. I think in addition to how much it would benefit a teacher and their family, it can come back tenfold to benefit our community. I think that's a point where I think that we miss sometimes.
If this is one of our policies already that was originated, that people hired before 2019, is that policy coming up review in any of these policies that we're going over and amending? When was the last time it was updated?
Right, we had to do
So
some
it's not-
clarification work.
It's
Yeah,
not
it-
coming up anytime
there was a
soon.
clarification aspect, but it had to do with wordage, just to make it clear of the way that it was, because it had something to do with if the child was enrolled before 2019 versus if the teacher was hired before 2019. So it was
So
looked at.
revisited.
It was looked at in that aspect. It's not, we can put it on as a policy to discuss and look at. I do think it's important to remember, though, that it is a policy, not contractual,
Right.
and therefore not a thing that teachers can organically bring up.
But I feel like as passionate as everybody is about this right now, maybe we should table it and maybe put that policy on the agenda in the future so that.
I think for our workshop too, it would be nice for us as we talk about moving forward. Are we going to continue to move continue to move forward with the things the board wants to see? Or are we going to continue to work in the capacity of supporting the administrators, the teachers, and the superintendents for what they want to see? And when we come up with things that we think are nice, and I know it's an emotional decision, but it needs to be a more logical decision. And if we are coming up with things that we think would be nice, then because we had a community member come to us in public comment, then we ran with it. And now we went back to our administrators and they're saying no. And we're saying, well, you didn't ask the right, you maybe didn't ask the right questions, or maybe you need to dig deeper. If that's the answer they're coming back to us with, we need to start deciding as a board, how do we make decisions moving forward? Is it based on what we want, or is it based on what they want? And do we support them?
I completely support the administrators and the teachers, and a community member did come forward, and it may have been the catalyst of this particular discussion. But I didn't agree with the outcome in the first place. And maybe it just brought it to the forefront of my mind. And I understand and respect that the conversation that Troy had with them, but I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, can you think about it a little more? There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I don't think there is either, but I just think as a board, we need to decide moving forward. Now, are we going to pull the policy back out? Is this one we're going to run with now? And then what's the next one? And what's the next one? I think as a board, we need to decide how we go about making these kinds of decisions and what's driving our decisions.
I'm having a
saying.
discussion right now. I'm not making any decisions, and I don't think there's anything harried about it.
No,
think it's
I
okay to have this-
agree
think
that
so
we,
too. And I'm having
I
discussion
agree
as
that-
well.
That we
Yeah.
are here to support the students and the administrators and the teachers to support the students, and funding and policy, and you know, this is the platform that we have to discuss such things.
And to be
So-
fair, we have a section for Board of Ed comments for future agenda items. And Lisa asked for this to be on, and I've put everyone's future agenda items on, and I think a discussion is perfectly appropriate. And in fact, I think in that discussion, Christine, that point that you just brought up is one, and maybe this forces us to sort of have that conversation. And that's why these board goals, I think, might be important for us to sort of decide, because there are going to be times that as a board, we have to push back against maybe what Troy and his administrators want a little bit. But how much are we weighing when we say, have you considered this? And they're saying, we don't want that, or we don't need that. And then what about the times that they come to us and say, you know, we do need that? Are we pushing back and saying, no, you don't? And so maybe we have to think a little bit more about how we do that. And I mean, it's probably growing pains, and it's okay. And it's certainly an emotional issue, I think, because we all have experiences with these wonderful families. But do we need to take action on this tonight, or are we okay just letting this be a discussion?
I had no intention of taking action, only a discussion.
Okay. Is everybody else comfortable with our discussion at this point tonight?
So where do we go from here? I guess when you put it on the agenda, do we just say, okay, we talked about it, we're done, or?
I think it sounds like this is something that's going to have to reappear on our agenda in a way that we have a more robust conversation about it, because when we have this conversation, it does appear just by listening that we're a bit divided on it. So I think it just has to reappear in a way that we can gather more information in a way that make people feel comfortable.
Okay, I'm a nuts and bolts person like that. Back office, but I understand. Yeah, I like to think about it more.
Thank you all. Troy, did you want to tell us how many tuition students we have this year?
Actually, I already mentioned what I do know. We have 10 to 11 entering ninth graders. I don't have the numbers of the other. I could email it to the board, the total numbers. As a, I give the total. I don't know. I just know we have 10 to 11 ninth graders entering ninth graders, and that's more than any current other grade. So that seems to be picking up, but I can email the board the total number. I could probably do that tomorrow.
Thanks. I think 11 is exciting. When you think about the impact that 11 kids make on a class, like
Mhm.
the size of our classes, it's pretty incredible. Appointment of the ECHMC board member.
Yeah, so this is the health consortium that we belong to. It's a health cooperative, actually, Eastern Connecticut Health and Medical Cooperative. And the meetings take place at Learn. It allows us to not have our medical insurance fluctuate that much from year to year. It kind of provides a buffer. But each town or each school district that's a member of this typically has two people that are members. I am a member. Bill was a member, but Bill isn't here anymore. So I need to ask the board to vote Kathy Trammell as the second board member for the ECHMC. And then so when we have a meeting next week, she can be a voting member.
I make a motion to appoint Kathy Trammell as the ECHMC, or the second ECHMC board member from our district.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Perfect. Thank you. And do you want to talk to us about the salary schedule?
Yeah,
for
so in the teacher's contract, it says that if I was going to hire someone with more than 6 years' experience, that I would need to come to the board and get your approval for that, which you could not give your approval as well. That's what it says in the teacher's contract. It's not Board of Ed policy, it's in the teacher's contract. So in following teacher's contract, I'm coming to you tonight to ask you if you would approve me hiring alternative education teacher, that's the Chanel Lapid, who has significant experience. And she does have 4 years of public school experience in Stonington, but she has 10 years at Waterford Country School, which would be more of a private school. However, it's full-time work and it's significant. So what I want to do is bring her in on step 10, and she has a master's. So that gives her credit for 4 public school years, and then half of the credit, which I'm allowed to give credit for a private school in a teacher's contract. I want to give her credit for half of those 10 years, and therefore there would be 9, so she'd come in on step 10. The salary would be 74, 766. And we feel like that would be a salary that she would accept. And it is not significantly more than what she was making.
What's
Can-
the step 6 salary? Step
It,
6?
it's step 10 masters.
What's this? I'm looking at the difference between step 6 and step 10.
Oh, I don't have that right here.
Find it for you. Give me a second.
Hey, Troy, can I just ask,
It's
Her-
not much.
her experience at Waterford Country School, was that as a teacher,
Yes.
classroom teacher, or?
It's
I mean, I know
special
it's not a purely
It's
classroom
spe-
teacher, but as
special
a
ed-
special ed, she,
special ed teacher.
with her special ed certification at that time period?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's very similar to what she would be doing for us.
While we're waiting for Brian to come up with that number, maybe a motion so we can
I
continue
was gonna say, I'll make the
discussions.
motion so we can get going on. Motion to approve hiring our new alternative ed director hire at step masters 10. Just
Sec-
masters, right? No masters plus,
No, just masters.
master step 10.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Alex, it's about a $13,000 difference between 6 and 10 with a master's.
Troy, can we afford this in that matrix that you had created?
Yes.
Other discussion?
I think this is a program that we're really looking to have be successful, that's saving us money, and that overall having somebody with experience who's going to be able to come in, hit the ground running and make this work is going to be a huge positive for us. Special ed teachers are hard to come by. And the idea that we're getting one with a wealth of knowledge, Waterford Country School is a
Yeah.
well-known program in the area. I think it's great.
And again, I would like to just support the work that our admins and our superintendent have done to make this hire. So
Okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Thank you. Moving right along to age of attendance policy. So if you notice, there's 4 policies here. 2 of them you've seen before and 2 of them you have not. And so Troy brought me those other 2 that are new to us tonight in an effort to get them not only read, but also approved before the start of school. So I know that that deviates a bit from our first read and then vote. But again, given that we have 1 meeting in August and we're coming up to the start of school, I thought maybe we could give it a try. And Troy could talk to us about what the changes are.
Yes.
But the first one is age of attendance. We've seen this one already. Lisa, you brought this one to us. And it's statutory.
The
We-
statutory changes, yeah.
we knew
there's
that
not
it was
much
there.
that
We had
can
held off on
do with
it
these.
because we were looking for a little bit of additional guidance. You're comfortable with it now and the language? Does anybody else want to talk about it?
The only question I would have is, do we want the forms attached within our policy manual, or do we want those forms separate in central office? That would be my only thing. I know that we've talked about trying not to clutter up too much in terms of our
The
actual.
withdrawal forms that are here, those should be purely a central office thing. Those should
Was
not.
The ones for the,
Exemption.
yeah, the exemptions.
That's what I'm talking about. I would say those shouldn't be in our policy.
Just
manual.
get rid of all three of them.
And the waiver as well. I just
Correct.
think, I just wanted, that's what, yeah, I just wasn't thinking we wanted them there. With just the written policy forms go within the regs.
Yes.
All right. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve policy 5112 as provided from CABE.
I'll second.
Oh, minus the forms.
Minus the forms. Yeah.
Any further discussion about it? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstention. All right, now this next one is one that we haven't looked at recently. This is promotion and retention.
And I'd like to explain that.
I would
because
love
you
for
don't-
you to
You don't
explain it,
yet know what I
please.
did here.
Yes,
And I could save a lot of discussion probably.
yes.
Okay, so the first one you see is the current policy that we have. And when I took a look at it in detail, and I apologize for not looking at it in detail until today. But I did look at it and I realized that it is bad. It's not, it's 2007 and there's conflicting language in there. It references old state tests. And it's not up-to-date language. So what I have on the next page for you is the updated, hot off the press CABE policy recommendation for a promotion, acceleration, retention policy. And the language is much better. And even so, for example, in the second paragraph, it says students shall be promoted on the basis of academic achievement and social emotional maturity. Whereas our currently policy says just academics, don't consider emotion or social or anything.
Mhm.
So it's more whole child, up-to-date language. And I think it's what we need. And I wanted to point out on the back side of it, we put in red what the high school administration is requesting to put in a policy so that they can clearly talk to families about what the criteria are to participate in the graduation ceremony. So if you're within one credit of meeting graduation requirements, you may participate. You're not going to get your diploma until you actually have earned it, but you need to have made arrangements to complete the credit. And then is less discussions, it's, less hurt feelings, and it's very clear cut and
It's in line with what's going on in other districts around us. I know a district that if you can take 3 credits over the summer and you're 3 shy, you walk and you take it, but you don't get your diploma until you've gotten those.
yeah,
3
so if
credits.
you're 1.5 credits short, you don't participate. And that's just where we
Yeah,
draw the line.
I do. The only concern I have is that, except in very unusual circumstances, no later than March 15th, a kid could blow up 3 classes at the end of the year and be 3 credits short. And I mean, that's the unusual circumstance, I'm assuming, but that March 15th date seems very arbitrary. I get it. It's for planning purposes, but you have an entire quarter to go.
Well, I think it's that retention is being considered. You want to let the parent know by March 15th if you're considering it. But yes, you're right. All right. So the kid could be doing fine. They just start flunking. You're right. So maybe, well, it says except in that would be a very unusual circumstance, right? If they just started to bomb and it looks like they're doing okay.
Like I said, my
Yeah.
only concern is how early
Yeah.
in the year. I mean, 'cause
Well,
you still have a
the
full
other thing
quarter
is
to go.
you're right to be concerned about early in the year, but we also want to give that child and that family opportunity to
Good
get
plan.
that kid up to speed.
No, understood.
CABE's language on the March 15th.
That's CABE language. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, got that.
It's all CABE language except that what's in red.
And the nice thing is that it's the admins that pulled this policy and said,
And
we
they
need
said,
to
yeah,
change this.
Can you add? Yeah.
That's what spotlighted that policy. And then it's so good that we're really updating all the language because
Yeah, it was
it's
terrible.
a
You were
horrible,
right when you
messy
pointed it out to me.
policy.
Hey, Troy,
Um,
do we do half credits at the high school? I haven't had
Yeah.
a kid go through the high school yet, but I'm
Semester.
meaning if you have a full credit English class, And at semester break in the middle, do you get the first half? Some schools do it so you get the first half and that's the first semester and your second semester is then.
Is it half credit, or
I would
credit
have
only
to
awarded
check-
at end of
I would
year?
have to check on that.
Okay, just because that March
Definitely.
15th date would be different based on.
That's for holding them back. I
But
think.
this,
Well,
this is,
but
this is the
meaning-
kids of all grade levels, not
So
just
if you
seniors here.
had an A through third quarter, counting 1, 2, 3 quarters, and then you hit
The fourth.
the
and
fourth quarter and bombed it, you're very likely to not be able to mathematically fail for the year.
Correct, if it's a full
But if
credit.
you do it as that half credit process like Stonington does, then it's very easy in the fourth quarter to lose
Right.
5 credits all at once.
I would think the principals were pretty well aware of like when this situation would come up and
Yeah, this is what they asked for.
this.
They asked for the March.
They asked for the one credit.
March 15th is CABE.
On the March 15th.
I'm only talking about the March
Oh,
15th. No, that's what,
About the
no, the one credit piece of things, great. That's what they're asking for. I have no problem with that. The March
Right.
15th, I'm just wondering because if it would be something where a kid's taking 5 classes and they lose 2.5 credits in that last one and would have retention issues, that's different than, okay, I bombed the fourth quarter after March 15th, but retention is still very unlikely because they had an 80.
Should we just
before
take
that.
out that language, that little piece? So should we just say parents will be notified as early as possible that retention is being considered, period. The principal shall be responsible for making final decisions as to retention and assignment.
As early as practical.
You want to
Because
say
I think it's about
practical?
practicality, because you might not know until a month ago that the kid's not going to walk. I know, yeah.
So do we just want to take out March 15th so it doesn't lock us in? Because it sounds like there's some,
I mean,
not
but again,
sure.
there's that whole, there's the qualifier at the end that says, except in unusual circumstances. A kid, if you're a school that grants it semester half credit, the unusual circumstances, that kid blew up in the fourth quarter after having a great first semester and great third quarter, but then absolutely tanked in the fourth.
Then let's just take out very because it seems very ambiguous to me. No pun intended. Like when it becomes very, I don't know. It's just
And the principals read through this and saw the March 15th date.
I'm not sure they saw the March 15th.
I mean,
So I think they would be fine leaving it in or taking it out. I think they can work with it.
if you're not concerned about it, I'm not concerned about it because if you think that that's going to give plenty of time to be able to make that decision, then fine. It seems random, but
Can I make a motion?
yes.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the CABE version of policy number 5123.
I'll second.
Do we want to have any,
Adding our language?
Excuse me. Yes, do I need to read the language?
No, but I just think you need to,
yes.
it's not caved, it's
Yes.
adding our language.
Yes, CABE's recommended policy in addition to the last couple of sentences in the last paragraph by the administrators.
policy 5123 is presented by the superintendent.
Perfect.
Nice.
I second.
Okay.
do we want to have any further discussion about it? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
I,
Opposed, abstain. We're getting close. Okay. Menstrual products in the student bathroom. Again, this was one that we looked at last time. We had asked Troy to go back and think about the language, adding some language, talk to his administrators and talk about the things that sort of made sense while still obviously following the statute. Troy, what did you come up with?
So administrative team is fine with this language because it really is just kind of stating what the law is now. We know they have a plan to comply with this. We did discuss offering other products, hygiene products in restrooms, but the team felt like offering what is required here, at least to start, would be where they want to start. And kind of see how things roll out. They'll be placing these items in more bathrooms than they currently are. And they have been doing this already at Wheeler to a certain degree. but we actually have to now place them in at least one men's restroom that's accessible to kids in grades 3 through 12. So we have a plan to do that. It might not be in the next to the third grade classroom, but it is accessible to any student in grades, 3, down to grade 3. So the nurses are going to be monitoring this. There'll be baskets with products in the bathrooms. And again, it's already currently happening, not at the elementary school, but it will be. And will be in compliance with this policy that you could adopt, and it is the law. So whether you adopt it or not, we have to do it. And we have a plan to do it.
Do we want to have a motion so that we can have discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve P 5141.215.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I would only ask that the language be changed slightly to the Board of Education shall provide free menstrual products in all restrooms which are accessible to students in grades 3 through 12. So that every student has what they need, any bathroom they go into.
I'd like to say, if we're following state statute, do we need the policy?
If we want to change the wording at all, we would.
I think that my administration would be, it may find it quite challenging to increase what we need to do according to this law right now without implementing what we need to do according to the law and seeing how that goes. I think we're open to increasing it in the future. But we want it to work well. We don't want it to be a failure, or something we gotta like try to pull back on somehow. So I hate to put us in a situation where we risk it not going well. And my team of administrators has a plan that they think it can roll out and go well. So I would rather not change the wording right now and make it so we have to do more than the law. I think the law is having us do quite a bit. And I think it is a good thing that we do this, but I just don't want to try to do more right now.
Troy, can I just ask one clarifying question here? And I understand that concern, but I think at the very least, when we start talking about, putting them in all bathrooms, we really should be looking at both locker rooms because of the way locker rooms are used for visiting teams when females have to go into the male locker room at a school for basketball or other events, because that's how they do separate teams. So I think while it does say, in at least one men's restroom, I think that plan needs to include the locker rooms as well.
Without putting it on policy, just ask them to do that.
I mean, as long as it says at least, right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
I think they should be in the locker rooms for that reason alone.
Yeah, so I could talk to my administrative team about that
Piece.
opinion that where they should be, but I really want to trust my administrative team to come up with a plan that they think is going to be successful initially, and then we could always expand upon it later. I think that might actually be in their plan about the locker room.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
As a parent of female athletes, I would absolutely hope so.
And I guess my only thing would be, we typically, to try to stay with policy that mirrors statute. So I'd like to see us be consistent with that and not pick certain policies to change language and certain ones stay the same, for consistency to stay with it. And like you said, it does say at least one, so certainly giving the directive.
We just did that though. In the previous policy, we chose a policy to change the language on.
But
So
this wasn't a statute. Was this a state statute policy though?
Yes.
It is? Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I thought that one was just.
I think everything we're looking at right here is statutory tonight.
Okay.
I think sometimes it's just necessary to change. I mean, I don't think it should be all or none.
That's
It
fine. I
should-
was thinking we were consistently always passing just by only the statute, so.
No, I don't think always is necessary for always. I'd like to stand strong on changing the language to all, because I want every single student to have access whatever bathroom they're in. I think that's important. I don't think that one should go to one bathroom and it not be there because that's not the right bathroom and have to find another bathroom. And just as a suggestion of implementing it, maybe move away from the baskets and perhaps we could install some vending. I think that would reduce any student, taking, a pile or whatever. It's just a suggestion that you may have already thought of, but I feel very strongly about changing that wording.
I want to agree with Lisa. I feel very strongly that we should have it be all, just because we also don't want to have any ambiguity. Are we sure that it's going to be part of the plan to have these products put in the men's locker room? Like, I want to make sure that, while I certainly trust the administration, just going forward, making sure that it's very clear that that's what our directive is.
Would it be possible to take everyone's concerns into consideration here? I think the major change is that we're going to do this in the elementary school. And so I think I don't think it's that big of a change at the middle high school. And I think that they've sort of figured it out and we'll continue to figure it out. Is it possible to approve the statute, the policy as it is within statute, and then re-docket this for 3 months into the school year when it's been in practical application, and be able to bring the administrators in and have a conversation about how it's going, the direction that some board members would like to see this go, and be able to have a real conversation? I'm worried that they're concerned because it's new and they're not sure how to do it in a real way, and like what will be the things that maybe we're not thinking of. And I don't want to lock them into something that doesn't work. But I totally get what you're saying, which is we don't have to just do what's here. We can do differently. And I think that we should come back and talk about it again, but maybe this is just a timing issue. So is it possible to compromise on that? Pass it. I mean, I guess we don't have to do anything with it because they're going to do what the statute is.
Yeah.
I think you're saying, I want a policy that says it's everywhere. And so I'm suggesting that maybe we either pass this or do nothing, take no action, and then put it on the agenda for 3 months from now when it's been in practice, and then come back and say, how is it going? Could you consider going in this direction? Is that possible?
There is a motion on the floor.
I don't see the value in waiting 3 months for, to say that a student needs something when they need it.
I think it would just be about how they're accessing it. So it's for me, and I think what I'm hearing from Troy, knowing our administrators, is it's likely logistical and not anything about wanting to deny or make things difficult. I think that it's just about logistics. And so in 3 months from now, we'll have a real-time assessment of what those logistics are. And then we could talk about it maybe in a way that makes people feel like it's achievable. But I respect your want to move forward.
I'll weigh in. I'll say I would like to wait the 3 months. I think we had some policy in place, right? That seemed to have worked up to now. And I know now that we have the policy in front of us, we kind of are diving in a little bit deeper, but let's see how it works out.
Well, we have a statute now that's going to change to say that we have to do it the way this policy is written, which is a change.
Is it going to be, how are students going to know this, I guess? Is it going to be, how do I articulate this? I guess the reason I like the all is there's no guessing. If you're a student that happens to go into a bathroom, you don't need to know if whether it's there or not, or be like, shoot, I have to go to this one down the hall. I guess that's kind of,
It makes a great deal of sense. I think that we're, at least from what I'm hearing, the concern is how do we implement this in all of the elementary school bathrooms in a way that makes sense and is accessible and kids do know about it, but it makes sense that a third grader is in the same bathroom as a kindergartner sometimes, right? So how do we make that all make sense? And maybe the 3 months just gives them an opportunity to say, oh, we'll do it like this, and this is totally going to make sense to us. I don't want to be putting additional pressure.
How many boys' bathrooms are at the elementary school and how many bathrooms are at the middle school, high school? How many boys' bathrooms or men's bathrooms?
I would love to have my administrative team come and talk about how they're going to implement this policy before we make changes to it.
What I'm saying is.
I don't know the answer.
Statutorily, we have to do this.
Yeah,
Okay?
we've been doing it mostly, not at the elementary school.
That's 3rd through 6th at the elementary school. I appreciate the effort in doing it. 7th through 12th, but statutorily we have to do this. So I'm thinking, how many boys' bathrooms or men's bathrooms are there at their elementary school? Is there 3?
I don't know, but I know that.
If there's 3, you're talking about stocking 2 more bathrooms.
Right. I don't know the answers to your questions about number of bathrooms, and that's why I think maybe the administrative
That
team could come and
Having them in
explain their
all the
rollout.
bathrooms normalizes the fact that we need them there. Rather than going into one bath, well, oh, this is the bathroom where those things are.
Yeah.
Why aren't they in the other
Yeah.
one?
I
So
would,
it makes,
I would
it's
love it if my
confusing.
administrative team was okay with the board changing the policy, and I'm just not confident that they have a vision on how to do what you're asking right now. And I would want to have more discussion about that with them.
I don't
the-
think in light of what we have to do statutorily, I don't think stocking 2 extra bathrooms.
Well,
is a-
you're
is a
right,
lot.
but what does the elementary school principal think?
I don't know.
Well, I'm saying we should find out before you change the policy.
I disagree.
Okay,
I
so
tell
we
you,
have
I'm not going to be happy going back to my administrative team tomorrow and saying that the board made they actually made changes to the policy before they even know how you're going to roll it out. I would not be comfortable with that.
and again, like,
Goes to the point here, Troy. We should have had an idea of how they're going to roll this out. When we are going to talk about this policy and they have when they have it in their mind that they're going to do it a certain way and they can't come off of that, then you damn well should be bringing that to us.
all right, I'm going to dial this back a little because that's getting a little heated and it's
But if they're already
9:20 and
following the
it's
statute.
what, Judy, hang on a second, Judy. So I'm just going to dial it back because we're going to do this with decorum. So Brian, I hear what you're saying, Lisa, Troy, and I understand the pressure that you're under. Brian, it makes a ton of sense that you want to know.
I want to know this because a lot of the time we come here and it's like they have a plan, but we don't have the plan in front of us
Okay.
to help make an informed decision. And I'm sitting here at like 9:30 at night, and this is becoming close to a colossal waste of time. So if we could, let's speed this up so we can get out of here.
I would love to speed it up,
Thank you.
but there's a motion on the table and we're discussing it. And I believe that you're continuing the discussion. So
I
we
like
need
it.
to make a decision now because there's a motion on the table. How we are going to handle this tonight. Do we want to go around the table and say how we're going to handle it? Because we have to bring this motion to a conclusion. And I think I'm hearing from you is the only conclusion you want is for it to be changed. So that's going to be that you're going to vote this as a no. Is that right? Okay.
I'm sorry, can you just, sorry, the motion on the table is as it stands right now.
That
Yes,
was the,
correct.
that's the
I
motion.
just want to be clear.
Okay.
Who made that motion, please?
Didn't someone make it? Irma, did someone make that motion? Christine and Alex, who seconded the motion? Okay.
I'm willing to pull it. And
I'm fine. This says that it's one, I think, go back to the admins and say the board really feels strongly about having them in every bathroom. I don't doubt that they will do that. We still have a policy that says at least one. And it fulfills the need of what we're asking.
So if we were to straw poll, Brian, you're a no.
This is statute. Like, so
Based on language alone, I'd like to see more. Again, going
Right.
back to earlier discussion, that we can do better.
And I think that's what Lisa's saying. She wants to enhance the policy. And so you're in line with enhancing the policy. Okay.
Sorry, I just because I want to make sure that this is clear, this policy doesn't need to be on
Right.
the books.
It's optional
It-
because
because
a
it's
statute.
governed by statute. The only thing that would make a difference is if we adjusted the language
Right.
in the policy here.
So we have a motion on the table. How do we want to proceed? Chat, how do you want to proceed? Do we want to vote right now? Okay, unless the person wants to pull their motion. Okay. Okay, so all those in favor of supporting the CABE policy as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. So we don't have a policy unless someone wants to make another motion.
I'd like to make a motion for policy 5141.215 as is, except for amending it to the Board of Education shall provide free menstrual products in all restrooms which are accessible to students in grade 3 through 12.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so discussion. I am not going to support this tonight because I want to try and find some balance. I'd like to wait the 3 months. I'd like to hear from the administrators. It is really difficult to make a decision speculating what that might be. Let's hear from them and have these conversations with them. So that's where I'm going to be tonight. Any other discussion?
I mean, back to my point, as long as, if I had known what the plan was, I'd have been able to comfortably vote one way or the other. But absent that information, I can't make a vote one way or the other.
Okay,
I agree. I think we need to hear from the administrators, and we're already following state statute. So let's get more input from them before we proceed with it.
I don't feel the need to wait. This is fundamental. It's basic hygiene that is needed in all bathrooms.
okay. Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Abstain. Irma, what was that count? Let's go ahead and do that again. So all those in favor say aye. So we have 3 yays. All those opposed? And then 1 abstention. Okay. So I will put this back on the agenda with administrators to have this conversation moving forward. Okay. Suspension. This is another policy that Troy asked to bring tonight. Because there's some statutory language and he'd like to get that on the books.
And Troy, just for clarification, like the other policies, the red language is the change, but it's also the statutory change, because I was just reading this past week.
Yeah.
With regard to what we were doing. So all the red is what the Connecticut legislature has put into place for this year. So we have to follow it. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. That makes it easy.
Yeah. And a couple of the major changes here is that in-school suspension can't be more than 5 days.
Right.
Right. But this policy here still has the option for the board to have a expulsion committee, or as an alternative, you can have a hearing officer, which North Stonington has gone that way before in the past. For
Okay,
expulsion.
that language says still in
Yeah,
here.
that's
Cause when I
still-
looked at the original one that we had gotten
Yeah,
via
yeah,
Didn't say
email,
that.
All right, so
I
yeah.
was struggling with that because I
Yeah.
was like, wait, this
So
are
I
we being forced? into
Apologize
running
for that.
this
What
now?
we gave you was not the most updated version, so we substituted that in your packet that you got tonight, and it's in blue.
All
And
right.
it does have that in here.
Is everything else equivalent to the one that was sent out in the original packet?
as far as I know.
Okay.
I'm
No,
not,
I didn't have a chance to read through all of this.
I would suggest that the board maybe consider this to be like a first read and maybe look at voting for it next time, so you have time to look at it. Because we did just substitute it in with this packet tonight. This wasn't the packet that you were
So
saying.
you're comfortable with us waiting on
I'm
this?
comfortable with you waiting. We have to follow the law anyway.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, so we're on to approval of minutes. Let's take these separately. Do I have a motion to approve July 10th, 2024?
I'll make a motion to approve July 10th, 2024 minutes as written.
Sec,
You good? I don't care.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay. And then the last are the minutes from April 30th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve April 30th, 2024 minutes as written.
second.
The only discussion I have is that the first sentence says that it was held in a hybrid format, beginning at 5 in a virtual format only. It was virtual only. Can we just remove in a hybrid format? Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, on to our calendar. Next regular Board of Ed meeting is on September 11th. Then we have a regular Board of Ed meeting on September 25th. And then we have our Board of Ed retreat on September 28th. I do think we need to have some conversation, perhaps not tonight, about rescheduling that October one. Are we going to reschedule it? Can we collapse into one? Any comments about the calendar?
Just as told Troy, I'll be out on the 25th.
Okay.
Did we want to talk about that October 9th meeting though?
Do we want to just talk about it in September? Do you think then we'll know better if we can collapse into one meeting or if we need two for October?
Okay.
Okay. Board of Ed comments for future items. I think I captured them during the meeting. Do we have any public comment? Come on up. I think you might have to turn on, and if it doesn't work well, Sarah, just come grab one of our mics.
Does this work?
No.
It's on?
Oh,
On?
that sounds nice.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right. It's a feisty meeting tonight. I picked a good one. I want to make 3 comments. I noticed you don't have the 2-minute thing like we have on Board of Finance.
We don't.
I'm just gonna, wrap it up. Don't worry, my gymnast is in the car. She whacked her head tonight, but I felt like the one thing I came in to listen to, I ironically couldn't be here for, so figured we take a little detour on the way. But before I talk about that, Michaela, my oldest daughter, just started middle school, and she went to sports night, and I was so excited to hear that you're including 6th graders in the middle school sports. And I have to say, when I sat as a Board of Finance member, listening to some of the discussions in the last budget cycle and hearing that there were multiple school girls sports that were not able to happen because there wasn't enough interest, this just seemed like a brilliant solution. And so really excited for the new AD. And please pass on my thanks to all of the administrators, whoever put that together. I think that's fantastic that we're doing that. So thank you. I usually try to stay away from really polarizing topics, but what the hell? I'm gonna be brave like all of you and just talk about tampons and menstrual pads for a half a minute. I grew up pretty low income, and it was not something that I had. And I had some pretty stressful moments in school not having access to that. So I think it's really important that we do make it available. I can tell you for a fact, there are plenty of middle school girls right now that have gotten their period already. So knowing that I don't have to send my girls to the nurse to get something, but that they don't have to go, hey, can I go see the nurse, right? They can just go to the bathroom like a normal person and have access to what they need. So I think this policy is really important. And I'm totally in alignment with what Lisa says. Honestly, I think if you try to phase this in, boys are going to be boys and they're going to do dumb stuff with those things. It's going to happen. Just rip the Band-Aid off. Just my personal opinion. So for whatever it's worth, just get it out there. Last thing, I'm just going to kind of talk to some of the points. So thank you very much for considering a comment from the community. I think that's what community's members hope for when they come and they make comments. So I appreciate that. I think, you know, one of the things that struck me was a couple of things that were I think Lisa covered a couple of the things, so I'm not going to repeat those, but my understanding and why this actually came to my front of mind, in addition to being told that like the policy had changed, I became aware during the change of administration between Peter and Troy, that policy actually had to be clarified because there were some teachers that didn't think they were going to be able to take advantage of that and were very worried about it. Like I've personally spoken to some of those teachers in the elementary school. One of them is probably like one of my daughter's favorite teachers. And so to me, that's a huge retention thing, right? And when you're right, it might not be a recruitment carrot as much as it is a retention. So because when you come in and you're younger and you're, you know, first growing in your role, you're not so worried about where your kids are going and what school they're going to. But if you're an hour away and you have to figure out like how to get back to take care of those kids, bare minimum, your investment into the school and the community is going to be impacted by the fact that your kids are going to school somewhere else. That's just the bare minimum. Worst case scenario, you could lose those teachers after we've just invested 5 to 7 or whatever years into them and making them great teachers and great, you know, so much a part of the North Stonington community. So that's kind of how I look at that. And I feel like that was validated when we did have that little dust up that caused that, you know, policy to be reclarified then. So I do think I do appreciate the conversation and the willingness to relook at it. And I think the only thing I'll say is just what I said before. Like we in North Stonington have such an incredibly unique community. And I love it here because I got to experience my child's first experience in public school, and we had our ups and our downs, and I disagreed with the principal on things, and we had all kinds of stuff, right, that happened. But in the end, we all knew who each other was. We could call each other. We could have a conversation. We worked through things. And one of the other stories that really impacted me in my life is when my daughter was in first grade, she did something called running club. And she did it because she heard her friends were doing running club. And I was like, all right, whatever. You want to go run around? Go ahead. So she did it. I was a little nervous about it because I think the whole elementary school can do running club. And I was like, oh, my first grade daughter, I put her hair in the highest ponytail with like the biggest bow. I want to make sure whoever's watching, like the 30 kids running around the track, like had eyes on my 6-year-old. I was really nervous about it. And then it was very confusing, but apparently running club is the lead up to, now I understand, the Ed Foundation run. So it's the first and the last time she did running club, by the way. That's not the impressive part. In that race that she did, there were 2 people standing there with the megaphone, and they greeted every single one of those children that came back by name. Every single one of them. Like that's what makes this community amazing. Like we live in such a special, unique 1950s, whatever you want to call it. Like we have something really special here. And we have that kind of specialness because of the decisions we make as a community and how we don't necessarily always go with the flow. So Lisa already talked about that investment back in the community. And that's what I'm talking about. That's an intangible benefit that we get that, you know, while you can't put a dollar amount on it or you can't always quantify it, you know it when it's there. You feel it when it's there. And that's, to me, what's at the heart of this, you know, why I kind of keep being the squeaky wheel on this. I have talked to a lot of parents. One of the things I was told when I first inquired about it was that this is what our kids must want it. And I can tell you, at least the 2 other people that I talked to were surprised, didn't even know about it, were like, why would they take that away? So I don't think it's like I don't think it's a black and white or. Anyway, thank you so much. I think it's a great rest of your night and, have a great night.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for staying through the whole meeting. I hope she does okay. All right, any other public comment? Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night.